The back of a police cruiser is a cold place even when the heat is running. It smells of industrial cleaner and old sweat, and it is designed to make you feel small. I sat there with my hands cuffed behind my back, watching my own front door through the wire mesh. I watched Hunter talking to the two officers. They were young white men with high and tight haircuts and jaws set in stone. Hunter was putting on the performance of a lifetime. He was weeping. He was pointing at his wrist. He was gesturing toward the house with the frantic energy of a man who has been wronged. I could see him mouthing the words. He is crazy. He is dangerous. He is senile. He was painting a picture of me that I had seen too many times before, the angry, confused old black man who was a threat to the nice, respectable couple. One of the officers, let's call him Officer Miller, walked over to the car and opened the door. He did not look at me with kindness. He looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, a box to be checked before he could go home. "Step out," he said. "We need to clear a few things up before we transport you." I stepped out. My knees popped in the cold air. They walked me back into my own living room. Hunter and Keisha were standing by the fireplace, holding each other like survivors of a natural disaster. The lottery ticket was sitting on the coffee table inside an evidence bag. Hunter's eyes lit up when he saw me, but he quickly masked it with a look of fear. "Officer, please keep him away from me," Hunter whimpered, pressing himself against Keisha. "He is unstable. He thinks he won the lottery. He thinks everything in this house is his." Officer Miller looked at me. His partner, Officer Davis, stood by the door, his hand resting casually near his belt. The air in the room was thick with tension and the unspoken bias that hung between us like smoke. "Mr. King," Officer Miller said, taking out a notepad. "Your son-in-law says you stole this ticket from his bedroom dresser and then assaulted him when he tried to retrieve it. He says you have a history of confusion and aggression. Is that true?" I looked at Miller. I looked at Hunter, who was dabbing his dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. I did not raise my voice. I did not get angry. Anger is what they expected. Anger would confirm their narrative. "Officer," I said, my voice steady and low, the voice of a man who commanded platoons when these boys were not even born. "I would like you to do one thing before you book me." "And what is that?" Miller asked, sounding tired. "I want you to look at my phone," I said. "It is in my front pocket." Hunter jumped in immediately. "Don't listen to him, officer. He probably has a gun in there, or he is trying to trick you. He is delusional." Officer Davis stepped forward and patted my pocket. He pulled out my smartphone. It was unlocked because I had been using it when they arrived. "What am I looking for?" Davis asked. "Open the banking app," I said. "The blue icon. It is already logged in with my fingerprint. Go to transaction history. Look at yesterday." Davis tapped the screen. He frowned. Hunter's fake sobbing stopped. The room went silent. "What time did you say the ticket was bought, Hunter?" I asked, looking straight at him. Hunter stammered. I don't know exactly. Yesterday afternoon, around 2, I paid cash." I turned back to Officer Davis. "Read the line for yesterday at 14:05 hours, officer," I said. "Read it out loud so everyone can hear." Davis squinted at the screen. He scrolled down. He stopped. He looked at the phone, then he looked at the evidence bag on the table, then he looked at me. His expression changed. The hardness in his eyes cracked just a little, replaced by confusion. "Transaction at Shell Station 4th Street," Davis read. "Amount $2, date yesterday, time 14:05. I nodded. "Now open the state lottery app. The green icon. Look at the scanned tickets." Davis switched apps. Hunter took a step forward, his face pale. "That proves nothing," Hunter shouted, his voice rising in pitch. "He could have bought a candy bar. He is lying. He scanned my ticket after he stole it." Davis held up his hand to silence Hunter. He tapped the screen. He tapped the image of the scanned ticket. He looked at the physical ticket in the bag. He compared the serial numbers. Officer Miller looked over his partner's shoulder. They both looked at the screen. They both saw the truth. The digital scan matched the physical ticket perfectly, and right there on the screen, time-stamped and verified, was the upload time. 14:10, 5 minutes after the purchase. Officer Miller turned to Hunter. His demeanor had shifted. The sympathy was evaporating, replaced by the cold, hard look of a cop who realizes he is being played. "Mr. Miller," the officer said, his voice flat, "you said you bought this ticket with cash. You said Mr. King stole it from your dresser tonight." "Yes," Hunter insisted, but sweat was starting to bead on his forehead. "Yes, that is what happened." Then how do you explain that this ticket was purchased with a debit card registered to Reginald King and scanned into his personal account yesterday afternoon, almost 24 hours before you claim he stole it? Hunter froze. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Keisha. She was staring at the floor, her hands twisting together. The narrative was crumbling. The story of the senile old man and the victimized couple was falling apart under the weight of digital evidence. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply looked at Officer Miller. "Officer," I said, "that is my ticket, that is my house, and these people are trying to defraud me. I would like my property returned, and I would like these trespassers removed." Miller looked at Hunter. The disgust was plain on his face now. He hated liars more than he hated anything else. "Mr. Miller," he said, stepping toward him, "you have a lot of explaining to do. Filing a false police report is a crime. Attempted theft of property valued over $1,000 is a felony. This ticket belongs to Mr. King." Hunter backed away, his hands up. Wait, he stammered. "It is a misunderstanding. We share finances. It is a family pool. We bought it together." I stepped forward. "We share nothing," I said. "You have not contributed $1 to this household in 5 years." Officer Miller reached for the evidence bag. "I am going to release this property to its legal owner," Miller said, picking up the bag. "And then, Mr. Miller, we are going to have a long talk about why you wasted police resources." Miller turned to hand me the bag. The plastic crinkled. It was the sound of justice. It was the sound of victory. Hunter was finished. He was exposed. He was about to be kicked out of my house and possibly into a jail cell. But we had all forgotten about Keisha. My daughter had been standing in the shadows, silent and trembling. We thought she was broken. We thought she was ashamed. We were wrong. She was not ashamed. She was desperate, and desperation turns people into monsters. As Officer Miller extended his hand toward me, Keisha moved. She did not move like a human being. She moved like a wild animal lunging for a piece of meat. She screamed a sound that was half sob and half war cry. "No," she shrieked. "If we cannot have it, nobody can." She threw herself between us. Her hand snatched the bag from Officer Miller's grip. He was taken by surprise, not expecting a woman in a silk blouse to attack him. The bag tore open. The ticket fluttered out. Keisha grabbed it. Her eyes were wide and white and crazy. She did not try to run. She did not try to tear it. She knew I was too fast for that. She did something that made everyone in the room freeze in sheer horror. She shoved the ticket into her mouth. "Keisha," No Hunter yelled, reaching for her. She clamped her jaws shut. She chewed frantically, her face contorted, her jaw working up and down like a piston. She was swallowing $300 million. She was eating her father's legacy. She was consuming her own future just to make sure I didn't get it. "Spit it out," Officer Davis shouted, lunging forward to grab her. She fought him. She kicked and scratched, gulping down the dry paper, gagging but forcing it down. She swallowed hard, her throat convulsing. She pushed Davis away and stumbled back, panting, saliva dripping from her chin. She looked at me with a triumphant, twisted smile. Her teeth were gray with thermal ink. "It is gone," she wheezed, laughing hysterically. "It is gone. There is no ticket. No ticket means no winner. No winner means no money." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You get nothing, old man," she screamed. "Nothing. It is in my stomach. You want it. Cut it out of me." Hunter stared at her in horror. The officers looked at each other, stunned by the sheer insanity of what they had just witnessed. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the woman I had bounced on my knee, the woman I had taught to ride a bike. I saw the madness in her eyes, the absolute moral rot that greed had caused. She had just eaten a piece of paper, thinking it would destroy me. She began to laugh again, a high-pitched, broken sound that echoed off the walls. "It is over, Dad," she cackled. "You lose. We all lose. But at least you don't win." The room was silent except for her jagged breathing. Hunter looked like he was going to be sick. The officers looked ready to arrest everyone just to sort out the madness. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone again. I looked at Keisha with a profound sadness, not for the money, but for her soul. She thought she had played the ultimate card. She thought she had nuked the board. She did not know that in the modern world, paper is just a ghost. And she had just swallowed a ghost while the real demon was already in the cloud waiting to rain down on her. The room was silent, save for the wet, ragged sound of my daughter gasping for air. She stood there, chest-heaving saliva mixed with gray thermal ink staining her chin, looking at me with a triumphant madness in her eyes. She really believed she had won. She believed that by consuming the physical evidence, she had erased the reality of the situation. Hunter stared at her with a mixture of horror and awe, as if he were watching a car crash in slow motion. The two police officers were too stunned to move their hands, hovering near their belts, uncertain of protocol, for a woman who had just eaten $300 million. I looked at Keisha. I did not feel anger. I did not feel hate. I looked at the little girl I had raised, the woman who had just debased herself in the most primal way possible, and I felt only a profound, crushing pity. It was the kind of pity you feel for a rabid animal that doesn't know it is already dead. Keisha, I said, my voice soft, breaking the silence like a stone dropped in a still pond. Do you think this is 1990? She blinked, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, smearing the ink across her cheek like war paint. What? She wheezed, her voice raspy from the dry paper. Do you think we are living in the Dark Ages? I asked, stepping closer. Do you think the world still runs on scraps of paper and handshake deals? She straightened up, trying to regain some shred of dignity despite the gray sludge on her teeth. I destroyed it, she rasped, pointing a shaking finger at my chest. It is gone. You have no proof. You have nothing. It is my word against yours now, and I will say we bought it together. I will say you are senile. Without the ticket, you are just a crazy old man with a story. Hunter seemed to catch on to her logic. The color started to return to his face. She is right, he stammered, a nervous smile creeping onto his lips. It is gone, Reggie. The evidence is gone. It is a civil matter now, she said. And no judge is going to give $300 million to an old man with no ticket. I looked at Officer Miller. He was shaking his head, looking at my family with unmasked disgust. He knew what they were. He knew what they had just done. But he also knew the law, and without the physical ticket, things got complicated. Officer, I said, turning my attention to the lawman. May I show you something else on my phone? Hunter scoffed. Pictures don't prove ownership, Reggie. Anyone can take a picture. You need the ticket to claim the prize. Everyone knows that. I ignored him. I tapped the screen of my phone, opening the official state lottery application again. I navigated to the Rules and Regulations section, specifically the paragraph regarding digital identity and claim verification. Officer, please read this section here, subsection 4, paragraph B, I said, handing the phone to Miller. Miller took the phone. He adjusted his stance, angling the screen toward the light. He cleared his throat. In the event of a lost, damaged, or destroyed physical ticket, he read aloud, his voice booming in the small room. Claims may be verified through the official digital registry if the ticket was purchased via a registered debit account and scanned into the user's verified profile within the allotted time frame. The digital token serves as the primary proof of ownership, superseding the physical thermal printout, which serves merely as a customer receipt. The silence that followed this time was different. It was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hanging in the air, waiting to drop. I took the phone back from Miller. I turned the screen toward Keisha and Hunter. Did you hear that, Keisha? I asked gently. The paper you just choked down. It was a receipt. It was a souvenir. It was the equivalent of a grocery store slip. Keisha froze. Her eyes went wide, staring at the glowing screen. The actual ticket. I continued tapping my temple, is digital. It is a unique encrypted code stored on a server in the state capital. It is linked to my social security number, my biometrics, and my bank account. You cannot eat a server, Keisha. You cannot digest a cloud. I watched the realization hit her. It was a physical blow. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the back of the sofa to stay upright. She had humiliated herself. She had turned herself into a spectacle. She had eaten toxic ink and dry paper. And she had done it for absolutely nothing. No, she whispered. That is not true. That is a lie. It is the law, I said simply. You just gave yourself a very expensive stomachache for no reason, daughter. And I suggest you drink some water because that thermal ink is not good for digestion. Hunter made a sound like a balloon deflating. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on his haunches, his head in his hands. He knew it was over. The technicality he had pinned his hopes on had just evaporated. Officer Miller looked at me with a new respect. So, Mr. King, he said, the ticket is safe. The ticket is safe, I confirmed. The money is safe. The only thing that is not safe anymore is my patience. I turned to look at the two people who had plotted against me. They looked small now. Defeated. broken by their own avarice, but I did not feel the urge to help them up. I had spent my life helping them up, and every time they had used the leverage to kick me in the teeth. "Officer," I said, my voice hardening, losing the softness of the father and gaining the steel of the landlord. "I want to report a disturbance." "What kind of disturbance?" Miller asked, already reaching for his radio. "Trespassing," I said. Keisha looked up, her eyes wet with tears. "Trespassing. We live here, Dad. This is our home." "This is my home," I corrected her, sharp as a whip crack. "The deed is in my name, Reginald King. I pay the mortgage. I pay the property taxes. I pay the utilities." I pointed at Hunter. "You have no lease. You have no rental agreement. You have paid no rent in 6 months, under state law that makes you guests. Guests who have overstayed their welcome." I turned back to the officer. "And tonight, these guests assaulted me. They attempted to destroy my property. They filed a false police report. And they created a hostile living environment. I am revoking their permission to be on this property. Immediately." Hunter scrambled to his feet, panic flaring in his eyes. "You cannot do that," he shouted. "You have to give us 30 days. We have rights. We have tenancy rights." Officer Miller stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. "Actually, Mr. Miller," the officer said, his voice cold, giving me the opening I needed. "In cases of domestic disturbance and assault, the homeowner has the right to request immediate removal of the aggressors to ensure his safety. You attacked an elderly man in his own home. You tried to destroy assets valued in the hundreds of millions. That is probable cause for removal and arrest." "Arrest," Keisha shrieked. "You cannot arrest us. We are the victims here. He is stealing our future." I walked over to the front door. I unlocked it and pulled it wide open. The night air rushed in, biting and cold, carrying the scent of impending snow. "I am not stealing anything," I said, standing by the open door. "I am reclaiming what is mine. My peace, my home, my life." I looked at the officers. "I want them out. Now!" Officer Miller nodded to his partner. Officer Davis moved toward Hunter. "Let's go, folks," Davis said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Grab your essentials. You are leaving." "We are in our pajamas," Keisha wailed, looking down at her silk sleepwear. "It is freezing outside. We have nowhere to go." Hunter looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Reggie, please, be reasonable. Just let us stay the night. We can talk about this in the morning. We can work something out." I looked at him. I looked at the man who 20 minutes ago had thrown a remote at my chest and told me to get out. I looked at the man who had ordered me to pack my trash. "Reasonable?" I asked. Was it reasonable to call the state home to come pick me up in a van? Was it reasonable to try and tear up my ticket? Was it reasonable to treat me like a dog in the house I built? I pointed out into the darkness. "There is a motel on the interstate," I said. "They have vacancies. I suggest you start walking." Officer Miller placed a hand on Hunter's shoulder. "Move it," he said, "or I will move you in cuffs." Hunter flinched. He looked at me one last time, hoping for the old Reggie, the soft Reggie. He found only stone. He lowered his head and walked toward the door. Keisha followed him, sobbing, clutching her stomach where the paper was probably starting to cramp. She stopped in front of me. "I hate you," she hissed, tears streaming down her face. "You are a cruel old man. I hope you choke on that money." I looked at her. I didn't see my daughter anymore. I saw a stranger who looked like my wife but acted like my enemy. "I won't choke, Keisha," I said softly. "I learned how to chew before I swallow." She stormed out onto the porch, shivering as the wind hit her. Hunter followed her, his shoulders slumped. They stood on the driveway under the harsh glare of the streetlights, looking back at the house, looking back at the warmth and the comfort they had taken for granted. The officers followed them out to ensure they left the property. Officer Miller paused at the door. "Mr. King," he said, touching the brim of his cap, "you have a good night. Call us if they come back." "I will, officer," I said. "Thank you." I watched them for a moment longer. Two figures in expensive pajamas standing in the cold, realizing that the world is a very large and very hard place when you don't have a safety net. I gripped the handle of the door. "Goodbye," I whispered. I slammed the door shut. The sound echoed through the house. I turned the deadbolt. Click. Then the chain. Slide. I turned around and looked at my living room. It was messy. There was a remote on the floor. There was a torn evidence bag. But for the first time in years, it was quiet. It was peaceful. I walked over to my recliner and sat down. I pulled the phone from my pocket and looked at the digital ticket one more time. $300 million. But as I sat there listening to the wind howl outside, I knew the money wasn't the victory. The silence was the victory. The dignity was the victory. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. The war was far from over. Hunter wouldn't stop, Keisha wouldn't stop. They would come back with lawyers and lies. But I was ready. I was Reginald King. And this was my castle. The morning sun did not bring light, it brought a siege. I woke up, not to the sound of the birds in the oak tree I planted 40 years ago, but to the thumping of a helicopter rotor blade beating the air directly above my roof. It sounded like Vietnam in '68, a sound that triggers a muscle memory of adrenaline and survival in a man like me. I rolled out of bed, my joints stiff, and walked to the window, keeping to the shadows. I peered through the slats of the blinds, and what I saw made my stomach turn colder than the winter draft seeping through the glass. My front lawn, the lawn I mowed every Saturday morning with precision, was gone. It was trampled under the feet of a mob. There were news vans parked on my grass, their satellite dishes raised like mortars aimed at my front door. There were reporters with microphones shouting into cameras, and behind them was the crowd. Curious neighbors, strangers who smelled blood, people who had never met me but hated me because of a story they had been told. I went downstairs and turned on the television. I did not have to search for the channel. My house was on every local station. And there in the center of the screen, standing in front of the Motel 6 by the interstate, was Hunter. He looked terrible. He had clearly not slept, or perhaps he had used makeup to accentuate the dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, the top button undone to show a vulnerability that was entirely manufactured. Keisha stood next to him, looking at the ground, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. "He is a monster," Hunter was saying into a thicket of microphones, his voice cracking with emotion. "We took care of him for years. We sacrificed our youth, our savings, our privacy to care for an aging man who we thought loved us. And how does he repay us? He steals our future." The reporter, a young woman with too much hairspray, nodded sympathetically. "Can you tell us about the incident, Mr. Miller?" she asked. "He snapped," Hunter said, wiping a fake tear. "When we realized we won, he just snapped. He became violent. He used his military training against me. He twisted my arm. He threatened us. He said if we didn't leave, he would bury us in the backyard. We had to run for our lives in the middle of the night with nothing but the clothes on our backs." The camera zoomed in on Keisha. She looked up, her eyes big and watery. "I just wanted to help him," she whispered. "I love my dad." But the money changed him instantly. He looked at me with such hate. "And in my condition, the stress is just too much." "Your condition," the reporter pressed gently. Hunter put his arm around Keisha, pulling her close. "She is pregnant," he announced, his voice trembling with righteous indignation. "We just found out last week. We were going to use the money to buy a nursery, to start a college fund." And Reggie knew. He knew he was stealing from his own unborn grandchild. I stared at the screen. I felt a laugh building in my chest, but it died in my throat, turning into bile. Pregnant. Keisha had been on birth control since college. She hated children. She had told me 1,000 times she never wanted to ruin her figure. But it was the perfect lie. It was the nuclear option. It turned a dispute over a lottery ticket into a moral crusade. The chyron at the bottom of the screen flashed in bold red letters. War hero or villain. Grandfather steals $300 million from pregnant daughter. They had painted me as the angry, violent, greedy old man. They played on every stereotype, every fear, every prejudice. They made me the predator and themselves the innocent victims. Hunter knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he couldn't win in a court of law with facts, so he decided to win in the court of public opinion with lies. A loud thud against the front of the house made me jump, then another, and the sound of glass shattering. I walked to the front hallway. A brick had been thrown through the side window of the porch. Wrapped around it was a note. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. I looked out the peephole. A group of teenagers, probably skipped school to join the excitement, were throwing eggs at my siding. Yellow yolk ran down the white vinyl I had power washed last spring. Someone had already spray-painted the word thief across my garage door in jagged red letters. "Get out here, you coward," someone screamed from the street. "Give them their money." "Baby killer," another voice yelled. I stood in my hallway listening to the hate wash over my home. I felt the urge to go out there, to open the door and roar at them, to tell them the truth, to show them the receipts, the bank statements, the timestamps, to tell them that my daughter wasn't pregnant, she was just empty. But that is what Hunter wanted. He wanted the angry confrontation. He wanted the footage of the crazy old man screaming at teenagers on his lawn. He wanted me to look unstable so he could use it as evidence for a competency hearing. Discipline. That is what saves you when the world is burning. Discipline is doing the hard thing when the easy thing is to react. I went to the kitchen. I brewed a pot of coffee. I moved slowly, deliberately. I poured a cup, black, no sugar. I sat at my kitchen table away from the windows, and I drank it. I let the caffeine sharpen my mind. Hunter had played a good hand. He had gone scorched earth. He didn't care if he destroyed my reputation. He didn't care if he incited violence against me. He just wanted the money. He thought that if he made my life a living hell, I would settle. I would cut a check just to make the noise stop. He forgot who he was dealing with. He forgot that I spent 20 years negotiating contracts with union bosses who would break your legs as soon as shake your hand. He forgot that I had a friend who was smarter, meaner, and more patient than he could ever hope to be. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I scrolled past the hundreds of hate messages that were flooding my inbox from strangers who had found my number online. I found the contact simply listed as Cohen, Ezra Cohen. We met 40 years ago when he was a young lawyer fighting for fair wages for dock workers, and I was a young foreman trying to keep my men from starving. We bonded over a love of chess and a hatred of bullies. He was retired now mostly. He spent his days arguing with his rabbi and fishing, but he was still the sharpest legal mind in the state, a man who could find a loophole in the 10 Commandments if he needed to. I dialed. It rang once. Reggie Cohen's voice was gravel and smoke. "I'm watching the news. You look good in your file photo, but they really need to update that graphic. The font is terrible." "Hello, Ezra," I said, taking another sip of coffee. "So," Cohen continued, his voice dropping the humor, "the son-in-law decided to go with the defamation strategy. Bold. Stupid, but bold. And the pregnancy angle. That is a nice touch. Is she?" "She is as pregnant as you are, Ezra," I said. "I thought so." Cohen chuckled. "Listen, Reggie, the mob outside is ugly. I can have a private security detail there in 20 minutes. Former Mossad. Very polite, but very effective." "No," I said. "Let them scream. Let them throw eggs. Let Hunter think he is winning. Let him think I am cowering in here afraid of the light." "You want him confident?" Cohen asked. "I want him overextended," I said. "He is spending money he doesn't have on that hotel. He is racking up debt on the promise of a win. And now he has committed libel on national television. He has filed a false police report. And he has incited a riot. He has dug a very deep hole," Cohen agreed. "I want to kick the ladder away," I said. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the smile in Cohen's voice when he spoke again. "You want to execute the contingency plan." I looked at the brick on my floor. I looked at the egg yolk on my window. I thought about Keisha standing there lying about a child that didn't exist just to hurt me. "Start it, Cohen," I said, my voice cold and final. "Activate Phase 2. Freeze everything. The lines of credit, the car payments, the insurance. Call in the markers on the debt I bought, and send the cease and desist to the news station with the medical records proving Keisha had her tubes tied 5 years ago." I heard Cohen typing on a keyboard. The sound was like a machine gun. "It is done," Reggie Cohen said. "By noon today, his credit cards will be plastic rectangles of nothing. By 1 o'clock, the news station will have to issue a retraction or face a lawsuit that will bankrupt them. And by dinner time, Hunter Miller will realize that he picked a fight with a man who buys debt for a hobby. Thank you, Ezra." "Don't thank me yet," Cohen said. "This is just the opening move. Stay inside, stay calm. And Reggie, yes. Make sure you record the look on his face when his card gets declined at the hotel. I want to see it." I hung up the phone. Outside, the chanting was getting louder. Someone threw a glass bottle against the door. It shattered. I sat there in the dim light of my kitchen, and I waited. Hunter thought he had unleashed a storm. He didn't know that I was the hurricane. He thought he had trapped me. He didn't know that he was the one in the cage, and I had just locked the door. Phase 2 had begun, and it was going to be expensive for him. Very expensive. The presidential suite at the Four Seasons is a beautiful place to celebrate a victory, even if that victory is a lie. While I sat in my darkened kitchen listening to the mob outside throwing eggs at my siding, Hunter and Keisha were sitting in the lap of luxury. I could imagine it perfectly. Hunter would have ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, probably a tomahawk ribeye, just to prove he could. Keisha would be drinking Dom Perignon straight from the bottle, trying to wash away the taste of thermal paper and the lingering fear that maybe, just maybe, she had made a mistake. They were living on borrowed time and borrowed money, convinced that the universe had finally bent to their will. They believed that because they had made a lot of noise on the news, the world would simply hand them what they wanted. They did not understand that noise is not power. Leverage is power. And while they were eating steak, I was pulling the lever. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Ezra Cohen called me. He did not say hello. He just said it is time to watch the fireworks, Reggie. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the table. I closed my eyes and I let my imagination take me to the hotel dining room. Hunter finished his steak. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin that cost more than his shirt. He signaled the waiter with that arrogant snap of his fingers that he used on everyone he considered beneath him. The waiter, a professional man who had seen real wealth and knew Hunter was just a tourist with a credit card, approached the table with the leather bill folder. "Put it on the card," Hunter said, waving his hand dismissively. "And add a 20% tip. I am feeling generous tonight." He slid his platinum credit card onto the tray. It was a card he had maxed out 3 times in the last year, a card he kept only for appearances. He didn't know that the limit had been reached months ago. He didn't know that the only reason it hadn't been declined before was because I had been quietly paying the minimum balance every month from my pension just to keep my daughter from being evicted. I had done it to protect them. Tonight I stopped protecting. The waiter walked away. Hunter leaned back in his chair, smiling at Keisha. "This is the life, baby," he said. "No more worrying about bills. No more listening to your dad's lectures. We are free." Keisha smiled back, but her eyes were nervous. She was still thinking about the digital ticket. She was still thinking about the look in my eye when I closed the door. "Are you sure the lawyer can fix this?" she asked. Hunter laughed. "Positive. We have public opinion on our side. We have the narrative. By tomorrow morning, Reggie will be begging us to take the money just to make the cameras go away." The waiter returned. He was not smiling. He walked with the stiff, formal gait of a man bringing bad news. He placed the folder back on the table. "I am sorry, sir," the waiter said softly. The card was declined. Hunter frowned. He didn't look worried yet, just annoyed. "That is ridiculous," he snapped loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. "Run it again. It is a platinum card." "I ran it 3 times, sir," the waiter said, his voice dropping to a discreet whisper. "The bank has put a hold on the account. Code 42. "Code 42, Hunter asked, his voice rising. "What is Code 42? It means lost or stolen, sir, or frozen due to suspected fraud." Hunter stood up, knocking his chair back. His face turned a deep crimson. "Fraud," he shouted. "Do you know who I am? I am the man who just won $300 million. I could buy this hotel and turn it into a parking lot. Run the damn card again." Keisha tugged at his sleeve. "Hunter, everyone is looking. Just use the other one. Use the Amex." Hunter huffed and pulled another card from his wallet. The Gold American Express. He threw it on the table. "Try that one," he barked. "And take that look off your face before I have you fired." The waiter took the card. He walked back to the terminal. Hunter crossed his arms, fuming. He looked around the room, daring anyone to make eye contact. He felt powerful. He felt righteous. The waiter returned 30 seconds later. He was accompanied by the floor manager, a tall man in an immaculate suit. "Sir," the manager said, "this card has also been declined, as have the 2 backup cards on file for your room deposit." Hunter stared at him. The confidence began to crack, revealing the panic underneath. "That is impossible," he stammered. "I used that card this morning to book the suite. The authorization was revoked 10 minutes ago," the manager said. "We received a notification from the issuing bank. All lines of credit associated with your social security number have been frozen pending a legal investigation into financial insolvency." "Insolvency," Hunter whispered the word like a curse. "Yes, sir." "And since we cannot secure a deposit for the room, I am afraid I must ask you to settle the bill for dinner immediately via cash and vacate the premises." Cash, Hunter choked. "The bill is $500. I don't carry that kind of cash." "Then we have a problem," the manager said, signaling to 2 security guards standing near the entrance. Hunter looked at Keisha. "Do you have any cash?" Keisha shook her head, her hands trembling. I gave my last 20 to the cab driver. Hunter, what is happening?" Hunter pulled out his phone. "I am calling the bank. This is a mistake. This is Reggie. He did this." He dialed the number on the back of his card. He put it on speaker because his hands were shaking too much to hold it to his ear. The automated voice filled the silence of the dining table. "We are sorry," the robotic voice said, cheerful and cold. "This account has been suspended due to a court-ordered asset freeze related to the pending litigation King versus Miller. Please contact your legal representative." Hunter dropped the phone. It hit the tablecloth with a dull thud. "King versus Miller," he whispered. "He did it. He froze us out." But that wasn't the whole story. Freezing the cards was just the jab. The uppercut was coming from the past. You see, Hunter was a bad businessman. He was a gambler who thought he was an investor. Over the last 5 years, he had racked up debts all over town. Personal loans, business loans for startups that never started, payday advances. He thought he was slick. He thought he had outrun them because the collection calls had stopped 2 years ago. He told Keisha he had settled them. He lied. The calls stopped because the debt had been sold, and the man who bought it was sitting in a recliner 5 miles away, drinking black coffee. I had bought his debt pennies on the dollar through a shell company I set up years ago. I bought it not to collect, but to hold, to have a lever in case he ever tried to hurt my daughter. I held the paper on his car. I held the paper on his failed real estate license. I held the paper on his credit card consolidation loan. I owned him. I had just never called in the marker. Until tonight. Cohen had filed the paperwork at 4:55 p.m. just before the courts closed. He filed a motion for immediate repayment due to material change in circumstances and public admission of insolvency. Hunter had gone on TV and said he was broke and desperate. He had handed me the weapon. Back in the hotel, the manager was losing his patience. "Sir, if you cannot pay, we will have to call the police. Theft of services is a serious offense." "The police," Hunter yelped. "No. No police. We are leaving. We are leaving right now." He grabbed Keisha's hand. He tried to walk past the manager with his head held high, but he looked like a beaten dog. "Sir, the bill." The manager stepped in front of him. Hunter reached into his pocket. He pulled out his luxury watch. It was a Rolex, or at least he told everyone it was a Rolex. I knew he bought it on Canal Street for $200. "Take this," he said, shoving the watch at the manager. "It is worth 10 grand. Keep the change." The manager looked at the watch. He looked at the fake gold plating that was already starting to rub off on the band. He curled his lip. "Get out," he said. "Just get out. And do not come back." The security guards stepped forward, flanking them like criminals. They escorted them through the lobby, past the guests drinking cocktails, past the crystal chandeliers, past the illusion of the life they thought they deserved. They were thrown out onto the sidewalk. The valet did not bring their car. Their car, a leased BMW that I had been making payments on, had been towed 20 minutes ago, repossessed by the lien holder. Me. They stood on the curb, shivering in the night air, Keisha in her silk blouse and designer skirt, Hunter in his wrinkled suit. They had no coats. They had no car. They had no money. They had no credit. Hunter pulled out his phone again, trying to call an Uber. "Declined," he screamed, throwing the phone onto the pavement. "It is declined. My Uber account is linked to the card." Keisha started to cry. It wasn't the fake crying she did for the cameras. It was the ugly, terrified crying of a child who realizes the lights have gone out and no one is coming to turn them back on. "What do we do, Hunter?" she sobbed. "Where do we go? We can't go back to Dad's. The police will arrest us. We can't stay here." Hunter looked around wildly. He looked at the high-rise buildings of the city. He looked at the cars passing by, warm and safe. "We walk," he said, his voice hollow. "Walk where Keisha wailed." "I don't know." He shouted, snapping at her. "Just away. We have to get away." They started walking. I could see it in my mind's eye. 2 people who thought they were royalty trudging down the sidewalk in shoes not meant for walking. But the delusion was strong. It was a drug. Even as the cold wind bit through his thin shirt, Hunter stopped and grabbed Keisha's shoulders. "Listen to me," he said, his eyes manic. "This is just a setback. A temporary setback. Reggie thinks he has won. He thinks he can starve us out. But he forgets one thing. What Keisha sniffled. We won the lottery." Hunter said, a desperate grin stretching across his face. "We are worth $300 million. This misery right now, it is just part of the story. It is the part in the movie where the heroes hit rock bottom before they rise. We just have to survive tonight. Tomorrow we get a lawyer, a real shark. We sue him, we take the money, and then we come back to this hotel and we buy it just to fire that manager. Keisha nodded, wiping her nose. You are right. We are rich. We are just temporarily illiquid. They clung to that lie like a life raft in a hurricane. They wrapped themselves in the fantasy of wealth to keep out the cold. They kept walking, wandering aimlessly through the downtown streets, looking for a 24-hour diner where they could sit for free, looking for a park bench that wasn't too wet. I sat in my kitchen and listened to the silence of the phone. The fireworks were over. The show was done. Cohen's voice came back on the line. Reggie, are you there? I am here, Ezra. Did you enjoy it? I sighed. I looked at the picture of Keisha on my fridge. She was 6 years old, smiling with her 2 front teeth missing. No, Ezra, I said. I didn't enjoy it, but it had to be done. What is the next move? Cohen asked. They are going to get desperate, I said. Hunter is cornered. He has no money, and he has a pregnant wife who isn't pregnant to support. He is going to try something stupid. Stupider than eating the ticket, Cohen asked. Much stupider, I said. He is going to try to take what he thinks is his. He is going to come for the trust. And when he realizes he can't touch the trust, he is going to come for me. Let him come, Cohen said. We are ready. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the mob still camped on my lawn. They were quieter now, settling in for the night. They were waiting for the next act of the drama. They didn't know that the real drama was happening in the cold streets of the city where my daughter was learning for the first time in her life what the word consequences actually meant. I turned off the kitchen light. I went to the hall closet and pulled out my old heavy coat. I checked the locks on the doors. I was safe. For now. But I knew Hunter. I knew the greed that lived in his heart. He wouldn't stop until he was destroyed completely, and I was the only one who could do it. The siege outside my house had turned into a low hum of menace. The news vans had packed up for the night, leaving only the die-hard rubberneckers and a few teenagers hoping to catch a glimpse of the crazy lottery thief. I sat in the dark in my kitchen, the blinds drawn tight, drinking water and listening to the house settle. It was a lonely sound. A house without family is just a box of wood and drywall. I had emptied the nest years ago, but tonight the emptiness felt different. It felt like a tomb. I was checking the locks on the back door for the 3rd time when I heard a scratching sound. It was not a rock. It was a rhythm. Scratch, scratch, pause, scratch. My heart skipped a beat. That was the code. When Maya was a little girl and she got locked out after playing in the yard, she would scratch on the screen door just like that so I would let her in without waking her mother. I unlocked the deadbolt and cracked the door. A figure slipped inside, wrapped in a hooded sweatshirt that was too big for her. She pulled back the hood. It was Maya, my granddaughter, my baby girl. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and she was shivering. She should have been at her dorm room 3 hours away studying for midterms. Instead, she was standing in my kitchen looking at me like I was a ghost. "Grandpa," she whispered, throwing her arms around me. I held her tight. She smelled of rain and cheap coffee. She was the only good thing that had come out of the union between Keisha and Hunter. She had my wife Beatrice's spirit and my stubbornness. "What are you doing here, Maya?" I asked, pulling back to look at her. "It is dangerous. There are people outside who think I am a monster." "I saw the news," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw what Dad said. I saw what Mom did." She looked down at her sneakers. "I had to come, Grandpa. I tried to call them. I tried to ask them what was happening, and when they answered..." She stopped. She reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so bad she almost dropped it. "You need to see this," she said. I took the phone. It was open to a text thread with her mother. I adjusted my glasses. The screen was bright in the dark kitchen. "Mom." "This is insane," Maya had written. "Grandpa is not a thief. He is the most honest man I know. Stop this." Keisha's reply was a block of text that made my blood run cold. "You don't understand, baby. He is sick. He has dementia. He stole the ticket because he is confused. We are doing this to help him. We are going to get him the care he needs. We found a doctor, Dr. Eris. He is going to sign the papers tomorrow. Once we have the guardianship, we can put him in a nice facility and manage the money for the family. It is for his own good." I scrolled down. There was a message from Hunter. "Dr. Eris is expensive, Maya. 50 grand cash. But it is an investment. Once he signs the competency waiver, the old man is out of the picture legally. We get power of attorney. We get the ticket. We get everything. Just stay at school. We will buy you a new car when this is over. I lowered the phone. I looked at the kitchen wall, but I wasn't seeing the paint. I was seeing a cell, a white, padded room. They weren't just trying to steal the money anymore. They were trying to erase me. They were planning to pay a corrupt doctor to declare me legally incompetent. They wanted to strip me of my rights, my freedom, and my mind. They wanted to lock me away until I died so they could spend my money without guilt. It was not just greed. It was evil. Cold, calculated evil. Grandpa Maya sobbed. They are going to lock you up. They are going to take you away. I looked at her. She was 18 years old. She should be worrying about boys and exams. She shouldn't be standing in a dark kitchen reading her parents' conspiracy to commit fraud and kidnapping. I handed the phone back to her. My hand was steady. The fear I had felt earlier was gone. It had been burned away by a white-hot rage. They are not going to take me anywhere, Maya, I said, my voice low and rough. But Dr. Aries, she said. If he signs those papers, he won't sign them, I said, because he is not going to get the chance. I walked to the sink and poured her a glass of water. I needed her to be calm. I needed her to be strong. I needed her to be a soldier. Maya, I said, handing her the glass. I need you to listen to me very carefully. She drank the water, gulping it down. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I am not senile, I said. You know that, right? I know, she said. You are the smartest person I know. Good. Your parents are desperate. They are broke. They are scared, and now they are dangerous. They have crossed a line, Maya. They are not just bad people anymore. They are criminals. I paused, letting the weight of that word sink in. They are planning to commit a felony, I continued. Conspiracy to commit fraud, false imprisonment, and I am going to stop them. But I cannot do it from here. I am trapped in this house. What can I do? She asked. Her eyes were wide, but the fear was being replaced by determination. She wanted to help. She wanted to fix the broken thing her parents had created. I walked over to the loose floorboard in the pantry. I moved the sack of potatoes and pried up the wood. I pulled out a metal box. Inside was my emergency fund. Cash, gold coins, and a burner phone I kept for emergencies. I took out a thick envelope of cash, $5,000. I handed it to her. Grandpa, I don't want money, she said, backing away. It is not a gift, Maya, I said, pressing it into her hand. It is operational funds. She looked at me, confused. I need you to go to them, I said. What? She gasped. No, I can't. I can't look at them. I hate them. You have to, I said, gripping her shoulders. You are the only one they trust. You are the only one they will talk to. I need eyes on the inside, Maya. I need to know when they are meeting this Dr. Aris. I need to know where. I need to know the plan. I want you to go to that hotel where they are staying or wherever they ended up after I kicked them out. I want you to tell them you ran away from school because you were worried about them. Tell them you believe them. Tell them you think I am sick. Lie to them, she whispered. Yes, I said. Lie to them. Feed their ego. Make them think they have won you over. They are narcissists, Maya. They will believe you because they want to believe everyone loves them. I saw the conflict in her face. It is a terrible thing to ask a child to spy on her parents. It goes against nature. But we were far past nature now. We were in survival mode. If you don't do this, Maya, they might succeed, I said, softening my voice. If they get that paper signed, they can come here with the police and drag me out. They can force medicate me. They can make me disappear. Do you want that? No, she cried, tears spilling over again. No, Grandpa. Never. Then I need you to be brave, I said. Can you do that for me? She took a deep breath. She looked at the money in her hand. She looked at me. She straightened her spine just like I taught her. I can do it, she said. Good girl. I took the burner phone from the box and handed it to her. Use this, I said. Do not use your own phone to call me. They might check it. Text me only when it is safe. Delete everything after you send it. If they ask about the money, tell them you sold your laptop. Do not let them know I gave you anything. She nodded, taking the phone. She put it in her pocket. Where are they now? She asked. They are walking, I said grimly. They got kicked out of the Four Seasons. They probably ended up at the Motel 6 by the highway. It is the only place that takes cash and doesn't ask questions. I will find them, she said. She hugged me again. This time it wasn't a hug of fear. It was a hug of solidarity. We were a team. The old man and the young girl against the world. Be careful, Maya, I whispered into her hair. Hunter is unpredictable. If he gets violent, if he raises a hand to you, you leave. You run. You call the police. Do not try to be a hero. Just get the information. I will. Grandpa, she said, pulling away. She pulled her hood up. She looked like a shadow again. I love you, she said. I love you too, baby girl. Now go. The back way, through the neighbor's yard. Don't let the cameras see you. I watched her slip out the back door and disappear into the night. My heart ached. I had sent my granddaughter into the lion's den, but I had no choice. Hunter and Keisha had escalated the war. They had brought in a doctor to steal my mind. They had declared that my life was forfeit. I went back to the table and sat down. I looked at the empty spot where the box had been. $50,000 for a doctor. That was the price of a man's soul these days. I picked up my own phone and dialed Cohen. It was late, but I knew he wouldn't be sleeping. Ezra, I said when he answered. Reggie. What is it? They are bringing in a shrink, I said. A Dr. Eris. They are going for a competency hearing. They want to institutionalize me. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Cohen spoke and his voice was cold as ice. Eris Cohen said, I know him. He lost his license in New York for writing prescriptions for oxycodone to mob wives. He is a gun for hire, Reggie. If they are using him, they are desperate. They are desperate, I agreed. And I have a spy in their camp, Maya Cohen asked. Maya, I confirmed. Good girl, Cohen said. But Reggie, this changes things. If they file that paperwork, even with a crooked doctor, it freezes the trust. It freezes the ticket. We need to stop them before they sign. I know, I said. That is why I need you to find out everything you can about Dr. Eris. I want his skeletons. I want his dirty laundry. I want to know what he eats for breakfast. I will put the investigators on it tonight, Cohen said. But Reggie, be careful. If they are willing to do this, they are willing to do anything. I know Ezra. I hung up. I sat in the dark listening to the wind. They wanted to say I was crazy. They wanted to say I had lost my mind. I closed my eyes and smiled a grim, mirthless smile. I haven't lost my mind, Hunter, I whispered to the empty room. I just sharpened it. And when you try to take it, you are going to cut yourself to ribbons. The subpoena arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under the door of my hotel suite like a death threat written on legal stationery. I picked it up with 2 fingers, feeling the weight of the lies printed on the pages before I even read them. It was a lawsuit, a civil complaint filed in the Superior Court. The plaintiff was Hunter Miller. The defendant was Reginald King. The claim was for 50% of the lottery winnings plus damages for emotional distress and compensation for services rendered. I sat in the armchair by the window and read the document. It was a masterpiece of fiction. According to the filing, Hunter was not just my son-in-law, he was my primary caregiver. He claimed he cooked my meals, managed my medications, and drove me to my appointments. He claimed that the lottery ticket was a joint venture purchased with pooled family funds and that I had verbally agreed to split any winnings 50-50 in exchange for their continued care of my failing mind. It was sickening. It was the kind of lie that makes you question the nature of reality. Hunter, who had never cooked a meal that didn't come out of a microwave. Hunter, who didn't know the name of my doctor. Hunter, who had borrowed money from me every month for 5 years and never paid back a cent. Now he was suing me for half of a fortune he hadn't earned based on a relationship he had never honored. I called Cohen. They found a lawyer, I said. I know, Cohen replied, his voice sounding like gravel crunching under tires. His name is Silas Thorne. They call him the Vulture of Vine Street. He chases ambulances and bitter ex-wives. He is cheap, he is dirty, and he loves the cameras. Can we stop this, I asked. Not without a hearing, Cohen said. He filed an emergency injunction to freeze the assets claiming you are dissipating marital funds. We have to go to court, Reginald. We have to look him in the eye. The preliminary hearing was set for Thursday. I walked into the courthouse wearing my best suit, the charcoal wool one I had bought for Beatrice's funeral 10 years ago. It was a little loose in the shoulders now, but I stood tall. I did not walk like a victim. I walked like a Marine entering hostile territory. The courtroom was cold and smelled of floor wax and old misery. Hunter and Keisha were already there sitting at the plaintiff's table. They were dressed for the part. Hunter wore a dark suit and a tie that looked somber. Keisha wore a modest dress and no jewelry. They looked like a grieving couple who had been wronged by a cruel tyrant. Silas Thorne sat next to them. He was a thin man with slicked back hair and a suit that was too shiny. He had a smile that looked like an open wound. He tapped his pen on the table, staring at me with the dead eyes of a predator who smells blood. Cohen sat beside me. He didn't look at them. He opened his briefcase and laid out a single yellow legal pad and a pen. He looked like he was about to do a crossword puzzle, not fight for $300 million. "All rise," the bailiff shouted. Judge Patterson entered. He was a stern man with a reputation for hating nonsense. He looked at the paperwork in front of him, then he looked at the two tables. "We are here to discuss the emergency motion for asset freezing and the claim of joint ownership regarding the Powerball jackpot drawn on November 7th, Judge Patterson said. "Mr. Thorne, you have the floor." Thorne stood up. He buttoned his jacket and walked toward the bench. He had a voice like oil, smooth and slippery. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a tragic case of a family torn apart by greed. My client, Mr. Miller, has spent the last decade caring for his father-in-law. He opened his home, he opened his heart, and he opened his wallet to support a man who could no longer support himself." I gripped the edge of the table. The lies washed over me. On the day in question, Thorne continued turning to look at the gallery, which was packed with reporters. Mr. King and Mr. Miller purchased the ticket together. It was a ritual they shared, a bonding moment. "We have sworn affidavits stating that Mr. King promised to share the winnings, but when the numbers hit, greed took over. Mr. King, in a fit of confusion and avarice, stole the ticket and cast his own children out into the cold." "Objection," Cohen said softly without standing up. "Speculation," sustained, the judge muttered. "Get to the evidence, Mr. Thorne." Thorne smiled. He walked back to his table and picked up a small thumb drive. "We have evidence, Your Honor. We have audio proof of the verbal contract." Hunter sat up straighter. He looked at me and smirked. It was the same smirk he had when he threw the remote control at me. He thought he had the ace of spades. Thorne plugged the drive into the court's AV system. A hush fell over the room. "Please listen closely," Thorne said. A crackle of static filled the air, then my voice. It was undeniably my voice. "The ticket is ours. We are in this together. If we win, we split it. That is the deal." The recording stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. I stared at the speaker. I remembered saying those words. But I hadn't said them about the lottery ticket. I had said them 5 years ago when we were talking about a raffle for a charity turkey at the church. Hunter had recorded it. He had kept it. Or maybe he had found an old video on his phone and stripped the audio. "That is Mr. King's voice, is it not?" Thorne asked, looking at me triumphantly. "A clear admission of a partnership. A clear verbal contract. This ticket belongs to the family, Your Honor. Not to one man." Keisha dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Hunter looked solemn, shaking his head as if he were disappointed in me. The judge looked at Cohen. "Mr. Cohen, do you have a response?" Cohen stood up slowly. He groaned slightly as he straightened his back. He looked like a tired old grandfather who had wandered into the wrong room. "We do not dispute that it is my client's voice," Cohen said. A gasp went through the gallery. Hunter's eyes widened. He thought he had won. He thought Cohen was folding. However, Cohen continued walking toward the podium, his pace slow and deliberate. "We dispute the context, and more importantly, we dispute the timeline." "Timeline." Thorne scoffed. "The timeline is irrelevant. A promise is a promise." Cohen ignored him. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the plaintiff claims he was with Mr. King when the ticket was purchased. He claims they picked the numbers together. He claims they were standing side by side at the gas station on 4th Street at 2:05 p.m. on Tuesday. Is that correct?" "Yes," Thorne said. "That is in the affidavit." Cohen nodded. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Technology is a funny thing," Cohen said. "We carry our lives in our pockets. Our phones know where we are even when we don't want them to. They track our steps. They track our location. They track our sins." He unfolded the paper. "I subpoenaed the GPS data from Mr. Miller's cell phone provider for the date in question." Cohen said, his voice suddenly sharpening like a razor blade. "I also subpoenaed the location data from the transponder in his car, which I might add is legally registered to my client, Mr. King." Hunter stopped smirking. He shifted in his seat. Cohen held up the paper. It was a map with a bright red line tracing a path. "This is a map of Mr. Miller's movements on Tuesday," Cohen said. At 1:30 p.m., he left the house. He did not go to the gas station on 4th Street. He drove 20 miles south. Cohen walked over to the plaintiff's table and dropped the map in front of Hunter. "He drove to the Golden Eagle Casino," Cohen said. Hunter flinched as if the paper were burning hot. At 2:05 p.m., the exact moment Mr. King was buying the winning ticket at the gas station, Mr. Miller was not beside him offering advice and support. Mr. Miller was sitting at a blackjack table in the high-limit room. Cohen turned back to the gallery, and he wasn't just sitting there, he was losing. We pulled the casino records. In the span of 45 minutes, Mr. Miller lost $3,000. Cohen paused, letting the number hang in the air. $3,000, Your Honor. And do you know where that money came from? It came from a joint account he shares with his wife, an account that contained the money for their mortgage payment. I looked at Keisha. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at Hunter. Her mouth was open in shock. She didn't know. He had gambled away their rent money while I was buying the ticket that would save them. "That is a lie," Hunter shouted, standing up. "The data is wrong. I left my phone in the car. I was with Reggie." "Sit down, Mr. Miller," the judge barked, banging his gavel. Cohen wasn't finished. "We also have security footage from the casino," Cohen said calmly. "Time-stamped. It shows Mr. Miller at the table. It shows him losing. And it shows him throwing a drink at the dealer when he busted." Cohen turned to Thorne. "So unless your client has the ability to be in two places at once, Mr. Thorne, his claim of being present at the purchase and contributing to the decision is a physical impossibility. He was not there. He did not buy the ticket. He was 20 miles away, gambling away his wife's security while my client was securing his future." Thorne looked at the map. He looked at Hunter. He realized he had been played by his own client. He closed his folder. Hunter looked at me. His face was a mask of panic. The trap had snapped shut. The audio recording was useless now. It didn't matter what I had said in the past. The facts of the present proved he was a liar. Judge Patterson looked at the map. He looked at the casino records. He looked at Hunter with an expression of pure disdain. "Mr. Thorne," the judge said, his voice ice cold. "Do you have any evidence that contradicts this GPS data?" Thorne cleared his throat. "No, Your Honor." "Then this hearing is over," the judge said. "The motion for asset freezing is denied. The claim of joint ownership is dismissed with prejudice. And Mr. Miller, I am forwarding the transcript of this hearing to the district attorney. Perjury is a serious offense in my courtroom." Hunter slumped in his chair. He looked small. He looked defeated. Keisha turned to him. "You lost the mortgage money," she whispered, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom. "You told me you paid it. You told me we were safe." Hunter didn't answer. He couldn't. Cohen walked back to our table and sat down. He didn't smile. He just capped his pen. "Phase 1 complete," he whispered to me. I looked at Hunter. I looked at the man who had tried to steal my life. He was broken, but I wasn't done. The judge banged the gavel. Case dismissed. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I walked past Hunter's table. I stopped for a moment. "I told you, Hunter," I said softly. "You should have checked the details." He didn't look up. I walked out of the courtroom, leaving them in the wreckage of their own lies. But as I walked down the marble hallway, I knew this wasn't the end. A wounded animal is dangerous, and Hunter was wounded bad. He would lash out. He would try something desperate, and I would be ready. Desperation is a funny thing. It makes cowards feel brave, and it makes fools feel like geniuses. Hunter Miller was both a coward and a fool. After the judge threw his lawsuit into the trash and threatened him with perjury, Hunter didn't go home to lick his wounds. He didn't look for a job. He didn't try to make amends. He went looking for a shortcut. He went looking for the kind of men who solve problems that lawyers can't touch. I knew about Big Mike long before Hunter ever met him. When you work the docks for 40 years, you learn the ecosystem of the city. You know who moves the crates, who skims the top, and who lends money to desperate men at 50% interest. Big Mike ran a check cashing place on Martin Luther King Boulevard that was just a front for loan sharking. Hunter owed him $50,000. I knew this because I had bought the debt paper 2 weeks ago through my shell company, but Hunter didn't know that. He thought he still owed Mike, and he thought Mike was his friend. I can only imagine the conversation. Hunter sweating in that back room, promising the moon, promising 10 times the debt. $500,000 cash if Mike would just help him get rid of the obstacle. If Mike would help him remove the old man standing between him and the lottery ticket. Hunter probably thought he was being a gangster. He probably thought he was making a business deal. He didn't realize he was putting a hit out on a man who used to eat guys like Big Mike for breakfast. It was 3 in the morning when the war came to my doorstep. The night was cold, and the wind was howling through the eaves of the old Victorian house I had bought with Beatrice in 1980. I was awake. I don't sleep much these days. Old soldiers never really sleep, we just rest our eyes. I was sitting in the kitchen cleaning my old service pistol, not because I intended to use it, but because the ritual calmed me. The smell of gun oil and cold steel was familiar. Then I heard it. The sound of glass breaking. Not a small shatter like a pebble hitting a window. A heavy, wet crash followed by a whoosh of air being sucked into a vacuum. Then the light came. Orange. Angry. Flickering against the hallway walls. I didn't freeze. Panic is for people who haven't seen the world burn. I stood up and moved. I grabbed the industrial fire extinguisher I kept in the pantry. I had bought it 3 days ago. I knew Hunter. I knew escalation was coming. I just didn't think he would be stupid enough to use fire. I ran to the front of the house. The living room window was gone. In its place was a wall of flame. A Molotov cocktail had been thrown through the glass and had shattered on the hardwood floor. The rug Beatrice had picked out for our 25th anniversary was burning. The flames were licking up the curtains, reaching for the ceiling hungrily. The smell of gasoline was overpowering, choking the air. I pulled the pin on the extinguisher. I aimed at the base of the fire. I squeezed the trigger. White chemical foam blasted out, covering the flames, smothering the heat. I swept the nozzle back and forth methodically. I didn't scream. I didn't run outside. I fought the fire with the cold precision of a machine. In 30 seconds it was over. The room was filled with white smoke and the acrid stench of burnt wool and gasoline. The window was a jagged hole letting in the freezing night air. I walked to the window, crunching over broken glass and foam. I looked out into the darkness. I saw a dark sedan speeding away down the street, its taillights fading into the gloom. They hadn't stayed to watch. Amateurs. My heart was beating slow and steady. Thump, thump, thump. I stepped back from the window. I looked at the blackened spot on the floor. They tried to burn me out. They tried to burn down the house where I raised my daughter, where I nursed my wife, where I built my life. They tried to kill me in my sleep. I set the extinguisher down. I walked to the kitchen and washed the soot off my hands. I dried them on a paper towel. Most people would call 911. Most people would scream for the police. But the police write reports. The police take statements. The police investigate. And while they investigate, Hunter would be planning his next move. The police operate within the law. Hunter had just stepped outside of it. And so would I. I picked up my phone. I didn't dial Cohen. Lawyers were for the daylight. This was night work. I scrolled down to a number I hadn't called in 10 years. A number that didn't have a name, just an initial. S. It rang 4 times. A voice answered deep and gravelly like stones grinding together. Reggie, it is 3 in the morning. Hello, Solomon, I said. There was a pause on the line. Solomon West was 72 years old now. He walked with a cane and spent his days feeding pigeons in the park. But back in the day, Solomon was the sergeant at arms for the Longshoremen's Union, when I was president of the local chapter. Solomon was the man who made sure the strikes held. He was the man who made sure the scabs didn't cross the line. He was the man who made sure that when we sat down to negotiate, management listened. Is everything all right? Reggie Solomon asked. The sleep was gone from his voice. No soul, I said, looking at the ruined rug in my living room. Someone threw a cocktail through my window. Silence. Heavy, pregnant silence. Is everyone safe? I am safe. But the house is hurt. Beatrice's rug is gone. Who was it? Hunter. But he didn't throw it. He hired it out. Big Mike's crew. Big Mike Solomon scoffed. That punk. He thinks because he has a few boys with baseball bats he runs the South Side. He broke the rules. Saul, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. He attacked a civilian home. He attacked a retired Union man. He attacked a brother. We had rules on the docks. Unwritten rules. You don't touch family. You don't touch homes. You keep the business in the street. You keep it professional. Big Mike had crossed the line. He had brought war to a man's sanctuary. What do you need, Reggie? I need a quorum, I said, using the old Union code. I need the board to meet. Where? The warehouse on Dock 4. The old meeting spot. When? An hour. Done, Solomon said. I will make the calls. The boys are retired, Reggie, but they aren't dead, and they don't like it when people break the rules. I hung up. I went upstairs and changed my clothes. I took off the smoky pajamas. I put on my work boots, my heavy canvas pants, my old Union jacket with the patch on the shoulder, local, 456. I walked out of my house, leaving the broken window open to the night. It didn't matter. No one would dare come back tonight. I drove my truck down to the waterfront. The city was asleep, but the port never sleeps. The cranes towered against the sky like steel dinosaurs. The smell of salt water and diesel fuel filled my lungs. This was my territory. This was where I earned my name. Hunter thought I was just a grandfather. He thought I was a man who pushed paper. He didn't know that for 20 years I controlled the flow of every container that came into this city. He didn't know that I had shut down the entire eastern seaboard for 3 days in 1995 because management tried to cut our health benefits. He didn't know that the men who worked these docks were loyal to the bone. I pulled up to the old warehouse. It was abandoned now, slated for demolition, but the lock still worked with my key. I stepped inside. The vast space was shadowed and cold. 10 minutes later, headlights cut through the darkness. 3 cars pulled in. Old American muscle cars kept in pristine condition. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Solomon West, big, physically imposing even with his cane. Tony the Hammer Russo. An Italian brick of a man who used to run the crane operators. Jerome St. James. A quiet man who knew everyone's secrets and how to make things disappear. They were old. Their hair was gray, their faces were lined, but their eyes were sharp. They were the old guard. The men who built this city and the men who knew where all the bodies were buried. Reggie Solomon said, walking over and embracing me, "You look like hell. I feel like hell, Soul." Tony looked at me. "So this son-in-law of yours, the one on the news, he thinks he can burn you out. He is desperate, Tony. He owes Mike money. He offered Mike a piece of the lottery ticket to take me out." Saint laughed softly. "Selling what he doesn't have. That is a dangerous game." I looked at my friends, my brothers. "I don't want violence," I said. "I am not that man anymore." "We know," Reggie Solomon said, "but Mike needs to be reminded of the hierarchy. He is a small fish swimming in a pond he doesn't understand." "I want to buy the debt," I said. What Tony asked. Hunter's debt to Mike. "I want to buy it. I want to own it." Solomon smiled. His gold tooth glinted in the dim light. "You want to be the one holding the leash?" "Exactly. I want Hunter to know that he can't run. I want him to know that every time he turns around I am there. I want him to know that the man he tried to kill is the man who owns his life." Saint nodded. "Mike will sell. He is greedy. If we offer him cash, he will sell his own mother." "But first," Solomon said, tapping his cane on the concrete floor, "we need to have a conversation with him. We need to explain to him that throwing fire at Reginald King's house is bad for business. Very bad for business." Tony cracked his knuckles. "It has been a while since I had a conversation like that." "Go pay him a visit," I said. "Tell him I want a meeting. Tonight. Here. Tell him to bring the paper on Hunter." "And if he refuses," Tony asked, hoping he would. "Remind him who approved his permit to operate on the pier," I said. "Remind him that with one phone call I can have the union shut down every delivery to his businesses. Remind him that I can starve him out in a week." Solomon nodded. "Consider it done." They got back in their cars. The engines roared. I watched them leave. I stood alone in the warehouse. I felt a strange calm. Hunter had tried to bring chaos into my life. He had tried to use fear. But he didn't know that fear is a currency I stopped trading in a long time ago. He wanted a gangster. He got the union. And he was about to find out that there is a big difference between a loan shark and a chairman. The warehouse on Dock 4 was a cathedral of rust and shadows. The single bulb hanging from the corrugated steel ceiling cast a yellow cone of light onto the concrete floor, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the frigid air. I sat on a wooden crate in the center of that light, my hands resting on my knees, my breath misting in front of me. I waited. Patience is the first thing you learn in the military and the last thing you lose as a father. I checked my watch. It was 4 a.m. The city outside was dead, but the port was alive with the distant clang of metal on metal and the low moan of foghorns out on the bay. Headlights swept across the frosted windows. Car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed on the concrete. The metal side door groaned open and the wind rushed in, carrying the scent of the sea and the smell of fear. Solomon West walked in first, leaning heavily on his cane but moving with the unstoppable momentum of a freight train. Behind him came Tony and Saint, and between them, dragged along like a reluctant child, was Big Mike. I had never met Mike face to face. I had only seen his name on the overdue notices I had intercepted from Hunter's mail. He was a man who built a reputation on intimidation. He wore a heavy leather jacket and gold chains that clinked as he walked. He was a big man, broad and heavy, but right now he looked small. He looked small because Tony the Hammer Russo had a grip on his collar that could bend steel rebar, and Saint was walking behind him with a silence that was more terrifying than any threat. They shoved him into the circle of light. Mike stumbled and nearly fell, catching himself on his hands and knees. He looked up, blinking against the glare. He saw the empty warehouse. He saw the three old men standing like sentinels. And then he saw me. He didn't know my face. To him, I was just an old man in a Union jacket. But he knew the atmosphere. He knew he had been brought before a tribunal. "Who are you people?" Mike stammered, scrambling to his feet. "You cannot do this. Do you know who I am? I run the South Side." Solomon stepped forward and tapped Mike's chest with the brass tip of his cane. It made a hollow thud. "You run what we let you run, boy." Solomon said, his voice a low rumble. "You operate on Union land. You breathe Union air. And tonight you made a mistake that could cost you your permit to breathe." Mike looked around, wild-eyed. He looked at Tony, who was cracking his knuckles. He looked at Saint, who was simply cleaning his fingernails with a small knife. The bravado drained out of him, leaving only the sweat of a coward. "I didn't do anything," Mike said, his voice cracking. "I run a legitimate business." I stood up. The movement was slow and deliberate. I stepped into the light until I was standing 2 feet from him. I looked him in the eye. I let him see the history in my face. I let him see the wars I had fought both in the jungle and on these docks. "You threw fire at my house," I said. Mike froze. His eyes went wide. He looked at me, and the realization hit him like a physical blow. He connected the dots. The lottery, the news, the house. "You," Mike whispered. "You are the father-in-law, the lottery guy." "I am the man whose living room you tried to incinerate," I said, my voice steady. "I am the man whose wife's rug you destroyed. I am the man you tried to kill." "No," Mike shouted, backing away until he bumped into Tony. "No, I didn't know, I swear. He didn't tell me it was you. He just said it was an old man. He said it was an eviction." I asked. Hunter Mike blurted out. "Hunter Miller. He came to me yesterday. He was crying. He said he was going to be rich, but you were in the way. He said you stole his ticket." I nodded. I knew this, but I needed to hear him say it. I needed the confession. "And what was the deal, Mike?" I asked. "How much is a man's life worth to you?" Mike swallowed hard. He looked at Solomon, then back at me. He knew there was no lying here. These men could make him disappear into a shipping container bound for Singapore, and no one would ever ask a question. 10%, he whispered. He offered me 10% of the jackpot. $30 million. He said if I scared you out, if I made you leave, or if you had an accident, he would pay me out when he cashed the ticket. $30 million to burn an old man in his sleep. That was the price Hunter had put on my head. It was a lot of money. Enough to make a man like Mike do stupid things. Enough to make him forget the rules. "But he lied to you, Mike," I said. "He doesn't have the ticket. I do. And he can't cash what he doesn't hold." Mike's face fell. He realized he had been played. He had committed a felony attempted murder based on a promise from a man who was bankrupt. "He owes me," Mike said, a whine creeping into his voice. "He owes me 50 grand. He said this would clear the debt." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a thick envelope. It was the cash I had pulled from my emergency fund earlier. $10,000. I walked over to the crate and set the envelope down. "I am buying the debt," I said. Mike looked at the envelope, then at me. "What?" "Hunter's debt," I said. "The 50,000. I am buying it." Mike looked confused. He was expecting a beating. He was expecting a concrete shoes fitting. He wasn't expecting a business transaction. Why, he asked, "Why would you pay his debt?" "I am not paying it," I corrected him. "I am acquiring it. I am becoming the creditor." I looked at Tony. Tony reached into Mike's jacket pocket and pulled out a small black ledger. He flipped through it until he found the page marked Miller. He ripped it out and handed it to me. I looked at the page. Dates, amounts, interest rates that were illegal in 49 states. It was a record of Hunter's desperation and stupidity. "I am giving you $10,000 for this paper," I said, holding up the page. "That is 20 cents on the dollar. It is more than you will ever get from Hunter because Hunter is broke. And it is more than you deserve for throwing fire at my house." Mike looked at the money. He looked at the three men surrounding him. He did the math. If he said no, he walked out with nothing and probably a few broken ribs. If he said yes, he walked out with 10 grand and his life. Done, he said quickly, grabbing the envelope. It is yours. He is your problem now. I folded the page and put it in my pocket next to the lottery ticket. 2 pieces of paper. One represented my future. The other represented Hunter's end. We are not done yet, I said. Mike paused halfway to the door. What else? I want you to send him a message, I said. Right now. Mike pulled out his phone. What do you want me to say? Text him this, I said. The debt has been transferred. The new owner is not as patient as I am. Good luck. Mike typed it out. His thumbs moved quickly. Send it, I ordered. He pressed send. The little swoosh sound echoed in the empty warehouse. Now get out, I said. And Mike, he turned back trembling. If I ever see you on my street again, if I ever hear your name connected to my family again, Solomon here will pay you a visit. And he won't bring an envelope. Mike nodded vigorously. You won't see me, I promise. He ran out of the warehouse. The metal door clanged shut behind him. We heard his car start up and peel away tires screeching on the asphalt. I stood there in the silence with my friends. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me tired and old. You handled that well, Reggie Solomon said, putting a hand on my shoulder. You didn't break him. You bought him. That is the difference between a thug and a boss. He is terrified. Tony chuckled. He won't come back. But Hunter will, Saint said quietly. When he gets that text, he is going to panic. I nodded. That is the point. He thinks he is fighting a war on 2 fronts now. He thinks Big Mike sold him out to some cartel or some rival gang. He doesn't know the call is coming from inside the house. I looked at the ledger page in my hand. Hunter Miller. $50,000 principal. Accrued interest $22,000. Late fees $5,000. He owed $77,000, and the note was callable immediately. I imagined Hunter right at that moment. He was likely sitting on the edge of a bed in the Motel 6, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. He was probably waiting for a call from Mike, telling him the job was done, telling him the house was ash and the old man was gone. He was probably counting the imaginary millions in his head, and then his phone buzzed. I closed my eyes and pictured it. He picks up the phone. He reads the text. Debt transferred. Good luck. The blood drains from his face. His heart hammers against his ribs. He looks at the door of the motel room, and suddenly it doesn't look like a door anymore. It looks like a barrier that is too thin to stop what is coming. He doesn't know who bought the debt. In his mind, it could be anyone. It could be the Russians. It could be the Albanians. It could be faceless men with baseball bats and no mercy. He knows he has no money. He knows he has no ticket, and now he knows he has no time. He is going to run, I said, opening my eyes. He is going to try to disappear. Let him run, Solomon said. He can't run from paper, Reggie. You own the paper. I own the paper. I agreed. And I own the man. I thanked my friends. We shook hands, the secret handshake of the brotherhood that had kept us alive on the docks for 40 years. They got into their cars and drove away, leaving me alone in the warehouse. I walked to my truck. The dawn was breaking over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gray. It was a new day. I drove back to my house. The window was still broken. The rug was still ruined. But the house was standing. It had survived the fire just like I had. I sat on my front porch, the burnt smell still lingering in the air. I took out my phone. I had one more call to make. Not to Hunter, not to Keisha. I called Cohen. Ezra, I said when he answered on the first ring. Is it done? Cohen asked. It is done, I said. I hold the note. Good, Cohen said. Then it is time to tighten the screws. I will file the lien on his future earnings as soon the court opens. We will garnish every dime he makes for the rest of his life. Not yet, Ezra, I said. Let him sweat for a day. Let him look over his shoulder. Let him feel the weight of the unknown. Psychological warfare, Cohen mused. You always were a scary son of a bitch, Reggie. I learned from the best, I said. I hung up. I watched the sun come up over the neighborhood. The reporters were starting to wake up in their vans. They were setting up their cameras, preparing for another day of the circus. Let them film. Let them shout. I had the ticket. I had the debt. And somewhere in a cheap motel room, my son-in-law was realizing that the fire he started was about to consume him whole. I went inside to make coffee. I had a busy day ahead. I had to fix a window. And I had to wait for the inevitable call from a man who had just realized he was walking dead. The morning sun exposed the scars on my house with a cruel clarity. The scorched hardwood where the rug used to be was a black wound in the center of the floor. The window was boarded up with plywood I had cut myself at 4 a.m, the fresh sawdust mixing with the smell of gasoline and wet ash. I sat in my recliner, the only piece of furniture that felt safe, holding a cup of cold coffee and waiting. I knew the silence wouldn't last. Hunter was running scared. He had received the message from Big Mike and he knew the walls were closing in. Violence had failed him. Intimidation had failed him. Now there was only one card left to play, the sympathy card. I saw her coming up the walk through the gap in the blinds. Keisha. She was alone. That was the first tactical shift. She wasn't wearing the designer clothes she usually flaunted. She was wearing an old gray sweater and jeans, looking small and defenseless. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wasn't wearing makeup. To the untrained eye, she looked like a broken woman coming home to seek refuge. To my eye, she looked like a soldier in camouflage. She knocked gently, not the pounding of police or the frantic banging of a desperate man. Just a soft, tentative tap, the sound a child makes when they know they have done something wrong. I let her knock for a full minute. I wanted her to stand in the cold. I wanted her to look at the scorch marks on the porch siding. I wanted her to smell the fire her husband had paid for. Finally, I walked to the door and opened it. Keisha stood there shivering. When she saw me, her face crumbled. It was a masterful performance. Her chin quivered. Her eyes filled with tears instantly, and her shoulders slumped. "Daddy," she whispered, using the name she hadn't called me in 20 years. "Daddy, I am so sorry." She threw herself at me, burying her face in my chest. I did not hug her back. I stood there like a stone pillar while she sobbed against my flannel shirt. I felt her tears soaking into the fabric, but they felt cold. "Can I come in?" she choked out. "Please, Daddy. I have nowhere else to go. He is crazy. Hunter is crazy. I am afraid of him." I stepped back, allowing her entry. She walked into the living room and gasped when she saw the floor. She covered her mouth with her hands, staring at the blackened wood. "Oh my God," she cried. "Did he do this? Did Hunter do this?" "He paid for it," I said, closing the door and locking it. "Just like he paid for the hotel suite, with money he didn't have." Keisha turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know, Daddy," she pleaded, clasping her hands together. "I swear to God I didn't know. He told me he just wanted to talk to you. He told me he was going to apologize. When I found out what happened last night, I was sick. Physically sick. I threw up. How could he do this to you? To us?" She fell to her knees right there on the dirty floor. She grabbed my hand and pressed it to her cheek. "He manipulated me," she sobbed. "He has been manipulating me for years. He told me you hated us. He told me you were hoarding money while we starved. He made me believe we had to fight you. But I see it now. I see he is the monster. He brainwashed me, Daddy. Please, you have to believe me. I am your little girl." I looked down at her. I looked at the top of her head. I remembered braiding that hair when she was 5 years old, sitting on the back porch while Beatrice hung laundry. I remembered how she used to cry when she scraped her knee, and how a simple kiss would make it better. But I also remembered her eating the lottery ticket. I remembered her standing by while Hunter threw a remote at me. I remembered the text messages she sent to Maya, planning to lock me away in a mental institution. I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. I walked over to the kitchen table and pulled out a chair. "Sit down, Keisha," I said. She scrambled up and sat down, wiping her eyes with her sleeves. She looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes. She thought it was working. She thought the old, soft Reggie was back. "You say he manipulated you," I asked, sitting across from her. "You say you want to leave him." "Yes," she said, nodding vigorously. "I want a divorce. I want to come home, Daddy. I want to take care of you. I want to be a family again. Just you and me. And Maya. We can forget about the money. We can forget about the ticket. I just want my father back." I studied her face. It was a good speech. It hit all the right notes. But her eyes were shifting. They were darting around the room, checking the exits, checking my pockets, checking for the ticket. "Okay," I said. "I believe you want to leave him?" "I do," she insisted. "He is dangerous. He got a text message last night from some gangster and he went crazy. He started smashing things in the motel room. He hit the wall right next to my head. I ran away while he was in the bathroom. I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out the ticket. I pulled out a notepad and a pen. I placed them on the table in front of her. "If you are telling the truth, Keisha, there is a way back," I said. Anything, she said, reaching for my hand again. "I will do anything. I want you to write a statement," I said, my voice flat and businesslike. "I want you to write down everything Hunter has done. The fraud, the gambling, the false police report, and the arson. I want you to write that he hired Big Mike to burn my house down." Keisha froze. Her hand hovered over the pen. And then I continued, "I want you to sign a restraining order. And I want you to file for divorce today. Cohen is my lawyer. He will handle the paperwork pro bono. You will testify against Hunter in court. You will send him to prison for what he did to this family." I watched the gears turning in her head. This was the test. If she was truly a victim, she would grab that pen. She would want justice. She would want protection. But she didn't grab the pen. She pulled her hand back. She looked at the paper as if it were a trap. "Daddy," she said, her voice losing some of its tremble, "is that really necessary? I mean, he is sick. He needs help, not prison. If I testify against him, he knows people. It could be dangerous for us." "I am not afraid of his people," I said. "I own his people now. You will be safe. Write the statement, Keisha." She shifted in her chair. The tears stopped. The vulnerability began to harden into something else, something sharp. "We don't need to involve the police," she said, her tone changing, shifting from pleading to negotiating. "We can handle this as a family. Look, I have a better idea." She reached into her oversized sweater pocket. She pulled out a folded document. It was thick legal paper. "I brought this," she said, smoothing it out on the table, pushing my notepad aside. "It is a guarantor form. It is just a formality, Daddy. Hunter is in debt, yes, but if we show the creditors that the trust is solvent, they will back off. They just need a signature." I looked at the document. It wasn't a guarantor form. I recognized the language immediately because I had read thousands of contracts in my life. It was a transfer of beneficiary rights. It was a document that would grant Keisha full power of attorney over the King family trust, essentially handing her the lottery winnings under the guise of financial protection. She wasn't here to apologize. She wasn't here to leave Hunter. She was here to finish the job he couldn't do. She was the Trojan horse. "I just need you to sign right here at the bottom," she said, pulling a pen from her pocket and clicking it. "It just says you are designating me as the secondary trustee, just in case something happens to you. You know, with your health and everything, it will stop the lawsuits, Daddy. It will make us safe. Then I can divorce Hunter and we can keep the money." She smiled. It was the smile of a shark. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at her. The mask was slipping. The desperation was bleeding through. "You think I am stupid?" I asked, quietly. "What?" "No, Daddy, of course not," she stammered, pushing the paper closer. "It is just legal stuff. You don't have to read it all. Just sign it so we can be done with this nightmare." I picked up the paper. I ripped it in half. Then I ripped it again. "Daddy, what are you doing?" she shrieked, standing up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That cost $500 to draft." I looked at the pieces of paper fluttering to the floor. "You didn't come here to save me, Keisha. You came here to bury me. You want me to sign over my life to you. You want to take the ticket and run back to Hunter and laugh about how you tricked the old man." Her face changed. The sadness evaporated. The fear vanished. In their place was pure, unadulterated ugliness. Her lips curled back in a snarl. "You senile old fool," she spat. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was deep and guttural. "Who do you think you are? You are 75 years old. You are going to die soon anyway. Why do you need the money? Why are you being so selfish?" "Selfish?" I asked, standing up. "I worked for 40 years to put clothes on your back. I paid for your college. I paid for your wedding. I paid your rent for 6 months while your husband gambled away your future. And you call me selfish because I won't let you rob me." "It is my money," she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. "I am your heir. It belongs to me. You are just holding it. And you are too stupid to spend it. You are going to waste it on charity or some nonsense while we suffer." She was shaking with rage. The performance was over. The curtain had fallen. This was the real Keisha. This was the product of my parenting and Hunter's influence. A woman who believed the world owed her everything just for existing. "You think I don't know?" she sneered. You think I don't know you tricked Hunter with that GPS data? You think you are so smart with your lawyer friend. But you are just a lonely old man. And when you die, you will die alone in this empty house, and I will still get the money. I will get it all. I looked at her. I looked deep into her eyes. They were brown, the same shade of brown as Beatrice's eyes. Beatrice, who had worked 2 jobs so Keisha could have piano lessons. Beatrice, who had died of cancer, holding my hand, worrying about whether Keisha would be okay. I felt a tear run down my own cheek. It was hot and painful. "You have your mother's eyes, Keisha," I whispered. She stopped panting, waiting for me to capitulate, waiting for the sentiment to weaken me, but I continued, my voice hardening into steel. "It is a shame that your soul has been eaten by the devil. Beatrice would be ashamed of what you have become. She would be heartbroken to see her daughter turned into a thief and a liar." Keisha flinched as if I had slapped her. "Don't you talk about her," she hissed. "You don't have the right." "I have every right," I roared, slamming my fist onto the table. "I am the only one keeping her memory alive because you have forgotten everything she taught you. You have forgotten honor. You have forgotten work. You have forgotten love." I walked around the table. Keisha backed away, clutching her sweater. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. "You can't kick me out," she said, defiance creeping back into her voice. "I have rights. You have nothing," I said. "You have no rights here. You are not my daughter today. You are an intruder. You are a con artist trying to scam a senior citizen, and I am done being your victim." I marched her to the door. She tried to dig her heels in, but I was running on adrenaline and righteous fury. I opened the door and the cold air hit us again. "Go back to your husband, Keisha. Go back to the motel and tell him that his plan failed. Tell him that the old man isn't as confused as he thinks." I pushed her gently but firmly onto the porch. She stumbled but caught herself on the railing. She turned around, her face twisted with hate. "You will regret this," she screamed. "We will get that money. One way or another we will get it. And when we do, I will put you in the worst home I can find. I will let you rot in your own filth." I looked at her one last time. I memorized her face. Not the face of the monster standing on my porch, but the face of the little girl who used to scratch on the screen door. I said goodbye to that little girl. I buried her in my heart, right next to Beatrice. "Goodbye, Keisha," I said. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood and I wept. I wept for the family I had lost. I wept for the war I had won. But I did not open the door. I went back to the kitchen. I picked up the pieces of the torn contract. I put them in the trash. Then I picked up my phone. I had a text from Maya. "They are meeting Dr. Aris at noon, at the diner on Main Street. They are paying him cash." I wiped my face. The grief would have to wait. The war wasn't over. They were moving to the next phase. They were going to try to steal my mind. But they didn't know I had eyes everywhere. And they didn't know that I was done playing defense. It was time to go on the offense. It was time to introduce Dr. Aris to the consequences of his actions. The press conference room at the state lottery headquarters smelled of floor wax and anticipation. It was a sterile environment designed for life-changing announcements, but today it felt more like a courtroom before the verdict. The air was thick with the hum of cameras and the murmurs of reporters who had smelled blood in the water. They weren't just here for a check presentation. They were here for the finale of the family drama that had captivated the city for weeks. I stood behind the heavy velvet curtain waiting for my cue. I was wearing a new suit. Not the charcoal wool I wore to court, but a navy blue bespoke suit that Cohen had insisted on. It fit perfectly. I adjusted my tie in the reflection of a fire extinguisher case. I looked at the man staring back at me. He didn't look like a victim. He didn't look like a confused old man. He looked like a CEO. He looked like a chairman. Cohen stood to my left, looking relaxed and dangerous in his expensive gray suit. He checked his watch. "It is time, Reggie," he said. "Are you ready?" "I am ready, Ezra." To my right stood Maya. She was wearing a simple white dress and a blazer, looking older than her 18 years. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. She held my hand, squeezing it tight. "You got this, Grandpa," she whispered. "We got this, baby girl," I corrected her. The lottery commissioner, a woman named Mrs. Vance, stepped up to the podium on the other side of the curtain. We could hear her voice amplified by the microphone booming through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming," she began. "Today we are here to celebrate the largest single-ticket jackpot in our state's history, $300 million. The applause was polite but restless. They wanted the main event. "Please welcome the winner, Mr. Reginald King." The curtain parted. The flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm, blinding and relentless. I walked out into the light, holding Maya's hand. I moved slowly, deliberately. I stood at the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the reporters, I saw the cameras, and I saw the empty chairs in the front row reserved for family. I did not smile. This wasn't a celebration. It was an execution of justice. Mrs. Vance handed me the oversized check. It was a prop, a piece of cardboard with a number written on it that was too big to comprehend. I held it for the cameras. I let them take their pictures. "Mr. King," Mrs. Vance asked, leaning into the mic, "would you like to say a few words?" I adjusted the microphone. I looked directly into the camera lens, the red light blinking like an unblinking eye. I knew they were watching. I knew Hunter and Keisha were somewhere watching this broadcast, praying for a miracle or plotting a disaster. I said, my voice deep and steady. But before I could speak, the double doors at the back of the room burst open with a crash that echoed like a gunshot. "He is a thief!" The scream tore through the room, silencing the reporters instantly. All heads turned. Hunter Miller stood in the doorway. He looked wild. His hair was disheveled, his shirt was stained, and his eyes were manic. He pushed past a security guard who was too slow to stop him. Keisha was right behind him, looking haggard and desperate, clutching her purse like a weapon. "He stole that ticket," Hunter shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He is a fraud. That money belongs to us." The room erupted into chaos. Cameramen scrambled to get a shot of the intruders. Reporters shouted questions. Security guards rushed forward, but Hunter was running on pure adrenaline and desperation. He dodged them, running down the center aisle toward the stage. Keisha followed him, screaming incoherently. "Daddy, please don't do this," she wailed. "Think about the baby. Think about your family." She was still playing the pregnancy card, still trying to manipulate the narrative, even as she stormed a government building. It was pathetic. Cohen stepped forward, placing himself between me and the stairs. He didn't look worried. He looked bored. Hunter stopped at the base of the stage chest, heaving sweat dripping down his face. He looked up at me with a mixture of hatred and entitlement that made my stomach turn. "Tell them, Reggie," he yelled. "Tell them the truth. Tell them you promised us half. Tell them you are stealing our lives." The security guards finally caught up, grabbing Hunter by the arms. He fought them, thrashing like a fish on a deck. "Get off me," he screamed. "I have rights. I am the son-in-law. I am the victim here." Mrs. Vance looked terrified. She stepped back from the podium, looking at the security chief. "Get them out of here," she ordered. "Wait," I said into the microphone. My voice boomed over the chaos, silencing the room again. I looked at the security guards. "Let him speak," I said. "Let the world see him." The guards hesitated, looking at me, then at Mrs. Vance. She nodded slowly. They loosened their grip, but didn't let go. Hunter straightened his jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. He looked at the cameras, knowing this was his last chance, his final performance. "He is lying to you all," Hunter said to the press, his voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "He is a sick old man. He has dementia. He doesn't know what he is doing. He stole that ticket from my house. He attacked me. And now he is standing there pretending to be a hero while his daughter starves." He pointed at Keisha, who was sobbing dramatically into a tissue. "Look at her," he shouted. "Look at his own daughter, pregnant, homeless, because of him, because of his greed. Is that a hero? Is that a man who deserves $300 million? The reporters murmured. Cameras zoomed in on Keisha. For a second, the narrative wavered. People love a tragedy, and Hunter was selling a Shakespearean one. I watched them. I let them finish. I let them pour all their poison out into the open air. "Are you done, Hunter?" I asked calmly. "I am done when I get what is mine," Hunter spat. "I want my share. I want justice." I nodded slowly. "Justice," I repeated. "That is a good word." I turned to Mrs. Vance. "Commissioner," I said, "I believe there is a misunderstanding about the nature of this prize." Hunter smirked. "See," he whispered loud enough for the mic to catch. "He is cracking. He is going to confess." Mrs. Vance looked confused. "Misunderstanding, Mr. King?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "My son-in-law seems to believe that this money is going into my pocket. He seems to believe that he can sue me, harass me, and intimidate me into giving him a share of a fortune that he thinks I am going to hoard." I looked at Hunter. "You think this is about a lifestyle, Hunter? You think this is about mansions and cars and suits. You think money is for spending. Of course it is for spending. Hunter laughed nervously. What else is it for? I turned back to the microphone. I looked at the camera. I am 75 years old, I said. I have lived a full life. I have a house that I built with my own hands. I have a truck that runs. I have clothes on my back. I do not need $300 million to be happy. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. I have made a decision regarding the disposition of these funds, I continued. A decision that was finalized this morning with the help of my legal counsel, Mr. Cohen. Hunter's smirk faded. He looked wary. What decision, he asked. I turned to Mrs. Vance. Commissioner, please read the addendum to the claim form. The section regarding the payout option and the beneficiary designation. Mrs. Vance opened the folder on the podium. She adjusted her glasses. She looked at the document. Her eyes widened. She looked at me in shock. Then she looked at the crowd. She cleared her throat. According to the official claim filed by Mr. Reginald King, she read, her voice shaking slightly. The winner has elected the lump sum cash option. Hunter pumped his fist. Yes, he hissed. Cash. That means it is liquid. We can get it. Wait, Mrs. Vance said, raising her hand. There is more. She looked at the document again as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Mr. King has designated that 100% of the post-tax winnings, she read, slowly emphasizing every word, be immediately transferred to a charitable entity. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. What Hunter whispered. Mrs. Vance continued reading. Mr. King has registered to donate the entire sum to a newly formed nonprofit organization. He is keeping $0 for personal use. The room exploded. Reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs went off like strobe lights. Hunter stood frozen. His face went slack. His mouth hung open. He looked like a man who had just watched his house burn down for the second time. Donate. Keisha shrieked, her voice piercing the noise. Donate. Are you crazy? She broke free from the guard next to her and ran to the edge of the stage. You can't do that, she screamed, clawing at the air. It is $300 million. You can't just give it away. We need it. We deserve it. I looked down at her. You deserve nothing, Keisha. I said, my voice cold and final. You tried to steal from me. You tried to lock me away. You tried to destroy my reputation, and you thought you did it all for a pot of gold. I leaned over the podium. Well, the pot is empty, Keisha. I gave it away. Hunter fell to his knees. He actually fell to his knees. He looked at the ceiling and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You gave it away, he choked out. You crazy old bastard, you gave it all away just to spite us. I did not do it to spite you, Hunter, I said. I did it to save you. Save us, he screamed. You ruined us. You destroyed us. Money was the poison, I said. It was the cancer that ate your soul. As long as that money existed, you would never stop coming for me. You would never stop plotting. You would never stop hating. I pointed to the check. So I removed the cancer. It is gone, Hunter. There is nothing to sue for. There is nothing to steal. There is nothing to kill for. I stood up straight. You are free, I said. You are free to go get a job. You are free to make your own life. You are free to be the man you pretend to be. Hunter stared at me. His eyes were empty. The light had gone out of them. The hope, the greed, the ambition, it was all gone, replaced by a vast, terrifying hollowness. He looked at Keisha. She was sitting on the floor of the aisle, weeping into her hands. Not fake tears this time. Real tears. Tears of total devastation. It is gone, she sobbed. It is all gone. The security guards moved in. They picked Hunter up by the arms. He didn't fight. He was limp. He was a marionette whose strings had been cut. They dragged them out of the room. The cameras followed them, capturing every second of their downfall. The live feed was broadcasting their ruin to the world. I watched them go. I felt a sadness deep in my bones, but I also felt a lightness. The burden was gone. I turned to Maya. She was crying too, but she was smiling. She squeezed my hand. I am proud of you, Grandpa, she whispered. I looked at the reporters. They were shouting questions. Asking why, asking where the money was going, asking if I was insane. I leaned into the microphone one last time. The money is going where it can do good, I said, not where it can breed evil. I stepped back from the podium. Cohen closed his briefcase. Well done, Reggie, he said. We walked off the stage, leaving the chaos behind us. We walked out the back door into the cool afternoon air. The money was gone. But I had never felt richer. I had my dignity. I had my granddaughter. And I had the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I was truly free. The silence in the press room was not empty. It was heavy. It pressed down on everyone like a physical weight. Hunter was still on his knees, staring at the floor as if he could see his life draining away into the carpet. Keisha was sobbing a low, broken sound that grated on my nerves. The reporters were frozen, their pens hovering over their notepads, waiting for the punchline. They thought I was a crazy old man who had burned a fortune just to spite his family. They thought I had thrown the money into the ocean. I tapped the microphone. The sound popped through the speakers, making everyone jump. I did not say I gave it to strangers. I said, my voice booming through the hall. Hunter's head snapped up. His eyes were red and swollen, but a flicker of hope ignited in them. It was a desperate, pathetic flame, but it was there. He scrambled to his feet, dusting off his knees, trying to look like a man again. Keisha looked up too, her mascara running down her cheeks in black rivulets. What Keisha whispered. Who? Who did you give it to? I looked at Maya standing beside me. She looked terrified. She didn't know what was happening. She thought I had given it all away too. She thought she was going to have to drop out of college. She thought her future was gone. I put my arm around her shoulders. She felt small, but strong. She was the only one who had come to me not for money, but for love. She was the only one who had agreed to spy on her own parents to save her grandfather. She was the only king left who deserved the crown. I turned back to the crowd. I have established an irrevocable trust. I announced my words precise and measured. The $150 million lump sum payment after taxes has been deposited as of 9 a.m. this morning into the Maya and Beatrice Education and Welfare Trust. I heard Keisha gasp. She covered her mouth. Beatrice, her mother, my wife, the woman who had worked herself into an early grave trying to give Keisha a better life. And who is the beneficiary? Hunter shouted, his voice cracking. Who gets the money, Reggie? I looked him dead in the eye. There is only one beneficiary, I said. My granddaughter, Maya King Miller. The room erupted again, but this time it was different. It was the sound of shock mixed with confusion. Hunter looked at Maya. He didn't look at her like a father looks at a daughter. He looked at her like a wolf looks at a lamb. He looked at her like she was a walking ATM. Maya Keisha cried, running toward the stage. Baby, oh my God, you are rich. We are rich. She reached for Maya's hand, but I stepped in between them. I was a wall of blue wool and iron will. Back up, Keisha, I warned. But she is my daughter, Keisha shrieked, trying to look around me. She is a minor. I am her legal guardian. I control her assets. That money is mine to manage. Hunter was smiling now, a sick, twisted smile that made my skin crawl. He thought he had found the loophole. He thought he had won. He thought he could just bully an 18-year-old girl into signing over the checks. He thought he could manipulate her just like he had manipulated Keisha. I turned to Mrs. Vance, the lottery commissioner. Please read the stipulations of the trust, I said. Mrs. Vance adjusted her glasses again. She looked at the document in front of her. She looked at Hunter, who was already mentally spending the money on a new Ferrari. According to the trust agreement, she read loud and clear. The beneficiary, Maya King Miller, shall not have access to the principal or the interest of the fund until she reaches the age of 25. Hunter's smile faltered. 25. That was 7 years away. 7 years of waiting, 7 years of being broke. In the interim, Mrs. Vance continued. The sole trustee with full discretion over all disbursements for education and living expenses is Mr. Reginald King. The smile vanished completely. I saw the hate return to Hunter's eyes. I saw the gears turning. He was thinking about how to get rid of me. He was thinking that if I was the trustee and I died, the control would pass to someone else, maybe to Keisha. He was thinking about accidents. He was thinking about stairs. He was thinking about poison. I knew he would think that. I had spent 40 years in logistics. I knew how to anticipate bottlenecks and threats. I knew how to secure the supply chain. Read the final clause. Commissioner, I said, my voice hard. Read the contingency clause, or as my lawyer calls it, the dead man's switch. Mrs. Vance looked at the bottom of the page. Her eyebrows shot up. She looked at me with a new level of respect. She realized then that I wasn't just a lottery winner. I was a strategist. Furthermore, she read her voice echoing in the silent room. In the event of the untimely death or incapacitation of the trustee, Reginald King, prior to the beneficiary's 25th birthday. She paused. Hunter leaned forward, holding his breath. The entire principal of the trust shall be immediately liquidated and transferred in full to the National Veterans Association. The words hung in the air. Hunter blinked. He didn't understand at first. It took a second for the logic to penetrate his greed-addled brain. "Wait," he said stupidly. "What does that mean?" I leaned into the microphone. "It means, Hunter, that I am now the most valuable thing in your life." I stepped away from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at him. "It means that if I die, you get nothing. If I get sick, you get nothing. If I fall down the stairs, you get nothing. If someone breaks into my house and hurts me, you get nothing. If I have a heart attack because of stress, you get nothing." I pointed a finger at him. "If you want Maya to see a single dime of that money in 7 years, you better make sure I live to be 100. You are not my enemy anymore, Hunter. You are my bodyguard. You are my food taster. You are my safety net. Because if my heart stops beating, that money vanishes into the wind." Hunter's face went slack. He realized the trap he was in. He couldn't kill me. He couldn't hurt me. He couldn't even stress me out. He had to protect me. He had to keep me alive and healthy and happy, or the fortune he craved would disappear forever. "And there is one more thing," I added. "If any harm comes to Maya, if she is harassed, if she is pressured, if she is manipulated, if she feels unsafe in any way, I have the sole discretion to dissolve the trust and donate the money immediately." I looked at Keisha. "That means you can't bully her, Keisha. You can't guilt-trip her. You can't ask her for loans. You can't move into her dorm room. If you make her life miserable, I push the button, and the money is gone." Keisha looked at Maya. She looked at the daughter she had ignored for years, the daughter she had tried to use as a pawn. She realized she had lost control. Maya wasn't a resource anymore. She was a person protected by a wall of money and a grandfather who would burn the world down to keep her safe. "It is blackmail," Hunter whispered, his face purple with rage. "You are blackmailing us with our own inheritance. It is not your inheritance," I snapped. "It never was. It is my money, and I am using it to buy the only thing I care about, my granddaughter's future and my own peace of mind." I turned to Maya. "Do you understand, baby girl?" I asked softly. She looked at me. She had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. She understood. She understood that I hadn't just given her money. I had given her freedom. I had given her a shield against her parents' greed. They couldn't use her anymore. They had to treat her with respect or they would lose everything. "I understand, Grandpa," she said. "Thank you." I turned back to the crowd. The reporters were typing furiously. This was the story of the year. The old veteran who outsmarted his greedy family. The man who turned a lottery ticket into a fortress. Hunter stood there shaking. He was trapped. He was broke. He had debts he couldn't pay. And the only pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was locked in a vault that would only open if he behaved himself for 7 years. 7 years of poverty. 7 years of watching me live my life. 7 years of knowing that one wrong move, one slip-up, one moment of anger would cost him $150 million. He looked at me with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. But behind the hate, there was fear. He was afraid of me. He was afraid of my health. He was afraid of the very thing he had tried to destroy. "We are leaving," I said to Cohen. Cohen nodded. He signaled the security guards. They formed a phalanx around us. I walked down the stairs. Hunter stepped back involuntarily. He didn't try to touch me. He didn't try to block me. He looked at me like I was made of glass, like I was a fragile antique that he couldn't afford to break. "Good boy, Hunter," I whispered as I passed him. "Keep me safe." We walked through the aisle, the cameras flashing, the questions shouting. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what was happening behind me. Hunter and Keisha were standing in the wreckage of their plans, realizing that they were now slaves to my heartbeat. They had wanted me dead. Now they had to pray every night that I lived forever. We walked out of the building into the sunshine. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. Maya held my hand. "What now, Grandpa?" she asked. "Now," I said, opening the door of the limousine Cohen had hired. "Now we go get a burger, and then I am going to take a nap." and Hunter Cohen asked, climbing in after us. I looked out the window at the building where my son-in-law was probably screaming at a wall. Hunter has a lot of thinking to do, I said, and he has a lot of debts to pay, and for the first time in his life he doesn't have a safety net. The car pulled away. I watched the city roll by. I felt the check in my pocket, or rather the copy of the trust agreement. The money was already gone, already safe. I closed my eyes. I was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind of tired you feel after a long day of work when you know you built something that will last. I had built a wall made of money and laws and spite, and inside that wall my granddaughter was safe, and I was safe, and Hunter. Hunter was outside in the cold looking in, just where he belonged. The television in the corner of the motel room was still playing the broadcast, but the sound was muted. It didn't matter. Hunter didn't need to hear the commentary to know that his life was over. He sat on the edge of the sagging mattress staring at the screen where my face was still visible, calm and resolute, announcing the donation of $300 million. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Lottery winner gives it all away." Hunter stared at the words until they blurred. Gave it away. The old man had actually done it. He had burned the winning ticket just to spite him. He had taken the only thing that mattered in the world, money, and he had thrown it into a fire. A sound escaped Hunter's throat. It started as a laugh, a dry hacking sound, but it quickly morphed into a scream of pure, unadulterated rage. He grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, showering the cheap carpet with ceramic shards. Keisha, who was sitting in the corner curled into a ball, flinched. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with terror. She had seen him angry before. She had seen him throw things when he lost a bet or when a deal fell through. But she had never seen him like this. This wasn't anger. This was the total collapse of a narcissist who has lost his supply. "You did this," he roared, turning on her. "You and your stupid father." "Me," Keisha whispered, shrinking back against the wall. "Hunter, I tried. I begged him." "You didn't try hard enough," he shouted, advancing on her. "You should have made him sign the paper. You should have convinced him, but you are weak, Keisha. You are weak and stupid just like him." He grabbed her by the shoulders and hauled her up. His fingers dug into her flesh. "He ruined me." He spat into her face, his breath smelling of stale alcohol and fear. "He thinks he is smart with his trust fund and his donation. He thinks he beat me." "Hunter." "Please, you are hurting me," Keisha cried, trying to pull away. "Hurting you?" He laughed a manic sound. "You don't know what hurt is. But you are going to learn. You are all going to learn." He raised his hand. Keisha squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the blow. But the blow didn't come. Instead, there was a pounding on the door. Not a knock. A pounding. "Police, open up." Hunter froze. His hand hovered in the air. He looked at the door, then he looked at Keisha. Confusion warred with the rage in his eyes. "You called them," he hissed. "You called the cops on me." "I didn't," Keisha sobbed, shaking her head. "I swear, Hunter, I didn't." The door burst open. The cheap lock splintered and gave way with a single kick. 4 police officers stormed into the room, guns drawn. "Get on the ground," one of them shouted. "Get on the ground now." Hunter raised his hand slowly, his face pale. "Wait," he stammered. "This is a mistake. My wife and I are just having an argument. Tell them, Keisha. Tell them it is fine." Keisha didn't say a word. She just slid down the wall to the floor, weeping. On the ground, the officer repeated, stepping forward and kicking Hunter's legs out from under him. Hunter hit the floor hard, a knee pressed into his back. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, tight and cold. "Hunter Miller, you are under arrest for domestic battery," the officer said, hauling him to his feet. "Domestic battery," Hunter yelled, struggling against the grip. "I didn't touch her. Look at her. She is fine. This is a misunderstanding. That old man sent you, didn't he? Reggie sent you." The officer ignored him. He walked him toward the door. "And there is one more thing," Mr. Miller, the officer said, pausing in the doorway. "You are also being charged with conspiracy to commit arson and solicitation of murder." Hunter stopped struggling. He went limp. "Arson," he whispered. "We have a statement from a Mr. Michael O'Malley, also known as Big Mike," the officer said. "He turned state's evidence this morning. He gave us the texts, Hunter. He gave us the voicemails. He told us everything about the $50,000 you owe him and the contract you tried to put on your father-in-law's house." Hunter looked at the officer. Then he looked out into the parking lot. I was standing there. I was leaning against the hood of my truck watching. Maya was sitting inside, safe and warm. I had told her to call the police the moment she got the text from Keisha saying Hunter was losing control. I knew the timing. I knew the breaking point. Hunter saw me. Our eyes met across the asphalt. He didn't look angry anymore. He didn't look arrogant. He looked like a man who had woken up in a coffin and realized the lid was nailed shut. "Reggie," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Reggie, help me. Tell them it isn't true. Tell them it was a joke. I can explain." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched. I watched them shove him into the back of the cruiser. I watched him press his face against the glass, mouthing the word, "Please." I watched the cruiser pull away, lights flashing, illuminating the sordid reality of the motel parking lot. It was over. The leash had been pulled off. I walked over to the open door of the motel room. Keisha was still sitting on the floor, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth. A female officer was crouching next to her, speaking softly, offering her a bottle of water. Keisha looked up. She saw me standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the streetlights. "Daddy," she whispered. I looked at her. I looked at the bruise forming on her arm where Hunter had grabbed her. I looked at the wreckage of her life. "Get your things, Keisha," I said, my voice flat. She scrambled up, grabbing her purse. She didn't have anything else. No clothes, no dignity, just the purse and the consequences of her choices. She walked toward me. She stopped a foot away, waiting for a hug, waiting for me to tell her it was going to be okay, waiting for me to fix it. I stepped aside, letting her pass. "Get in the truck," I said. "Maya is waiting." She walked to the truck, head bowed. I looked around the motel room one last time. It smelled of cheap air freshener and violence. It was a fitting end to Hunter's ambitions. He wanted a mansion. He got a cell. He wanted a fortune. He got a felony. I walked back to the truck. I climbed into the driver's seat. Maya was in the back, holding her mother's hand. Keisha was crying silently. Grandpa Maya said softly, "Is he gone?" "He is gone." "Baby girl," I said, starting the engine. "He is gone for a long time." "How long?" Keisha asked, her voice small. "Arson," I said, putting the truck in gear. "Conspiracy, solicitation, domestic violence." I looked at her in the rearview mirror, with the evidence I gave them, with Big Mike's testimony, with the digital trail he left. He is looking at 10 years minimum, maybe 15 if the judge is in a bad mood. Keisha closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the seat. 10 years, she whispered. I drove out of the parking lot onto the main road. The city lights blurred past us. We drove in silence for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the tires on the pavement. Finally, Keisha spoke. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "Now you learn to live." I pulled into the driveway of my house. The plywood on the window was a reminder of the battle. The scorch marks on the porch were a scar, but the house was standing. I turned off the engine. "You can stay in your old room tonight," I said to Keisha, "but tomorrow you start looking for a job, and you start looking for a lawyer to file the divorce papers." She nodded. "Thank you, Daddy. I am not doing it for you," I said. "I am doing it for Maya, and I am doing it because despite everything, you are still my blood. But do not mistake this for forgiveness, Keisha. Forgiveness is earned, and you have a long tab to pay off." We got out of the truck. The night air was cold, but it felt clean. The mob was gone. The reporters were gone. It was just us. A broken family trying to find a way to glue the pieces back together. I unlocked the front door. We walked inside. It was quiet. I sat in my recliner. I heard Keisha and Maya going upstairs. I heard the water running in the bathroom. I took the copy of the trust agreement out of my pocket. I looked at it. Hunter was in a cage. The money was in a vault. And my family was under my roof. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a safe one. And for an old soldier like me, safe is the only victory that matters. The winter had turned into a wet, gray spring. The snow had melted, revealing the mud and the dead grass underneath, but the green shoots were starting to push through. It is the way of the world. Things die and things grow. My house was quiet now. A good quiet. Maya was upstairs studying for her finals. The sound of her typing on her laptop was a gentle rhythm that I had come to love. It was the sound of a future being built one keystroke at a time. I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes. I find comfort in simple tasks. The repetitive motion of the knife, The curling skin falling into the sink, the earthy smell of the starch. It reminds me of the days when peeling potatoes was all I could afford to do for dinner. There was a knock at the back door. Not the front door, the back door. The door for deliveries, the door for servants, or in this case, the door for the ashamed. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked over. I looked through the glass. It was a woman I almost didn't recognize. She was wearing a heavy coat that looked like it had been bought at a thrift store 2 sizes too big. Her hair, which used to be straightened and dyed and sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was now frizzy and pulled back into a tight knot. Her face was gaunt, without makeup, the skin sallow and tired. It was Keisha. I unlocked the door and opened it. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the expensive perfume she used to bathe in. It was the smell of old fryer grease, stale water, and industrial soap. It was the smell of a commercial kitchen. It was the smell of labor. She didn't look me in the eye. She looked at my boots. "Hello, Daddy," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't used it in days. "Hello, Keisha," I said. I didn't step back to let her in. I stood in the doorway, blocking the warmth. "I heard about Hunter," she said. "The plea deal." I nodded. 10 years. No parole for at least 8. He is going to a medium security facility upstate. He will have a lot of time to think about his life choices. Keisha nodded slowly. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself. Her hands were red and chapped, the nails cut short and jagged. No more manicures, no more acrylics, just raw working hands. "I am working," she said, as if she needed to prove something to me. "I got a job." "I know," I said. "Cohen tells me things. I know you are washing dishes at the diner on 6th Street. I know you work the night shift. I know you take the bus." She looked up, then surprised that I knew. Surprised that I still watched over her, even from a distance. "It is hard work," she said. "My back hurts. My feet bleed. The owner yells at me if I am too slow." "Welcome to the world, Keisha," I said. "That is the world I lived in for 40 years, so you didn't have to." She flinched. She looked down again. "I know," she said softly. "I know that now." She stood there shivering in the damp air. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask about the trust fund or Maya. She just stood there, existing in her misery. "I am hungry, Daddy," she said finally. Her voice broke on the word hungry. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a manipulation. It was a statement of biological fact. "I haven't eaten since yesterday," she admitted. "I had to pay the rent on my room. It was either rent or food. I chose the roof." I looked at her. I saw the hollowness in her cheeks. I saw the way her body was trembling, not just from cold, but from weakness. I stepped back. "Come in," I said. She walked in. She took off her shoes by the door without being asked. She walked to the kitchen table and sat down in the same chair where she had tried to trick me into signing away my life months ago. But she sat differently now. She sat on the edge of the chair, keeping her coat on as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to stay. I went to the stove. I had a pot of stew simmering. Beef, carrots, potatoes. Simple food. Filling food. I ladled a large bowl. I cut a thick slice of cornbread and buttered it while it was still hot. I poured a glass of milk. I placed the food in front of her. "Eat," I said. She didn't wait. She picked up the spoon and ate with a ferocity that was painful to watch. She didn't care about manners. She didn't care about napkins. She ate like a starving animal. She wiped the bowl clean with the cornbread. She drank the milk in one long gulp. I watched her. I poured her a second glass of milk. She drank that too, slowing down a little. She sat back in the chair and let out a long breath. The color was returning to her face a little. The trembling had stopped. "Thank you," she whispered. That was the best thing I have ever tasted." "Hunger is the best seasoning," I said, sitting across from her. She looked at me. Her eyes were clearer now. The fog of entitlement was gone, burned away by the harsh reality of survival. "I saw Maya," she said, "through the window. She looks happy." "She is happy," I said. "She is getting straight A's. She is volunteering at the shelter. She is becoming a good woman." Keisha nodded. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't fall. She didn't have the energy to cry. "I miss her," she said. "But I know I can't see her. I know I lost that right." "You did." I agreed. "I live in a room above a garage," she said, staring at her empty bowl. "It has a hot plate and a mattress on the floor. There are cockroaches. The roof leaks when it rains. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. I scrub dishes for 8 hours a night, she continued. I scrape the leftover food off the plates. Sometimes I look at the food people throw away. Half-eaten burgers, fries, steak, and I want to eat it. I want to take it out of the garbage and eat it. She looked at her hands. I used to throw away food, she said. I used to complain if my steak wasn't cooked perfectly. I used to send things back. Now I am the one scraping it into the bin. It is a hard lesson, I said. It is hell, she whispered, but it is real. She looked up at me. I am not asking for money, Daddy. I know you won't give it to me, and I know I don't deserve it. Then why did you come? I asked. She hesitated. She looked around the kitchen where she grew up. I just wanted to know if you were okay, she said. And I wanted to say that I finally understand. Understand what? I understand why you didn't help us, she said. I understand why you let us fall. Because if you hadn't, I would still be that person. That horrible person who thought she was better than everyone else. She touched the rough fabric of her coat. I am nobody now, she said. I am just a dishwasher. But when I walk home in the morning and I have my $20 in my pocket, I earned it. I stood on my feet and I earned it. And nobody can take that away from me. Not Hunter, not the bank, not anyone. I looked at my daughter. She was broken. She was dirty. She was poor. But for the first time in her life, she was making sense. I reached across the table. I didn't take her hand. I just placed my hand near hers. You are learning, Keisha, I said. She nodded. Can I come back? She asked. Not to live, just for a meal. Maybe once a week, on my night off. I thought about it. I thought about the trust. I thought about the rules I had set. I thought about Maya upstairs. But then I looked at the woman sitting in front of me. She wasn't asking for a handout. She was asking for a connection. She was asking for a lifeline to her humanity. You can come for dinner on Sundays, I said, but only if you are sober, only if you are clean, and only if you never ask me for a dime. I promise, she said quickly. I promise, Daddy. She stood up. She picked up her bowl and her glass. She walked to the sink. She turned on the water. She washed them. She scrubbed them until they squeaked. She dried them and put them away in the cupboard. She knew where they went. She walked to the door. She put her shoes back on. Thank you for the stew, she said. Keisha, I said as she opened the door. She turned back. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a $20 bill. She shook her head, backing away. No. You said no money. I am not giving you money, I said, walking over to her. I am paying you. She looked confused. Paying me for what? You wash the dishes, I said, tucking the bill into her pocket. That is labor, and in this house labor gets paid. She stared at the pocket where the money was. Then she looked at me. Her lip quivered. Thank you, she whispered. She opened the door and walked out into the gray afternoon. I watched her go. She walked differently now. She didn't strut. She didn't glide. She trudged. She walked like a worker. She walked like someone who knew the value of gravity. I closed the door. I locked it. I walked back to the kitchen table. I wiped the crumbs of cornbread. She had a long way to go. She might never make it back to where she wanted to be. But she had taken the first step. She had learned that you cannot eat pride, but you can eat the fruit of your own labor. I went to the stairs and called up, Maya. Yes, Grandpa, she yelled back. Dinner is ready, I said. I heard her running down the stairs, the sound of life. Keisha was out there in the cold, walking to a room with cockroaches. But she had $20 in her pocket that she had earned, and she had a full belly. It wasn't a lottery win, it wasn't $300 million, but it was a start. And for Keisha King, that was worth more than all the gold in Fort Knox. She was learning the lesson I had tried to teach her for 40 years, that the only money you truly own is the money you sweat for. That is the only legacy I could leave her now, not the trust, not the house, but the lesson. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to save her soul. The seasons have a way of smoothing over the rough edges of the earth. 1 year has passed since the storm broke over my family, and the world has turned exactly as it always does. The winter frost gave way to the spring rains which fed the summer heat, and now we are settling into the golden haze of autumn. I sat on my back porch, watching the leaves of the oak tree turn the color of burnt sugar. My hands were covered in dirt. Good dirt. Garden dirt. I had spent the morning pulling the last of the carrots and turning the soil for the winter rye. A truck pulled into the driveway. It was not my old beat-up Ford. It was a sensible sedan, reliable and clean. Maya stepped out. She looked different than the scared girl in the hoodie who had knocked on my door a year ago. She stood taller. Her hair was braided back in a style that meant business. She wore a blazer over her university t-shirt. She carried a laptop bag, not a backpack. She looked like a woman who knew the value of her own time. "Hey, Grandpa," she called out, waving a file folder. "Hey, baby girl," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "How is school?" "Dean's List," she said, smiling as she walked up the steps. "And the microeconomics final was a joke. I think I know more about managing money than the professor." I chuckled. "You had a crash course in the real world, Maya. That teaches you more than a textbook ever could." She sat down next to me on the porch swing. She opened the folder. It was thick with spreadsheets and grant applications. "I have the quarterly report for the Maya and Beatrice Fund," she said, her voice shifting into professional mode. "We are up 4% on the conservative investments. The interest yield this quarter is significant, Grandpa. We have about $200,000 in liquid capital available for distribution." I looked at her. She was 19 years old, managing a portfolio that would make a banker sweat. And she was doing it with a moral compass that pointed true north. "What do you want to do with it?" I asked. She tapped the paper. "I want to expand the scholarship program," she said. "We have 50 applicants from the inner city, kids with grades like mine but bank accounts like mine used to be. I want to fully fund 10 of them. Tuition, books, room and board. A full ride." I nodded slowly. "Education is the key that unlocks the heavy doors," I said. "Do it." She made a note in the margin. "And there is something else," she said, looking at me sideways. "The shelter needs a new van. The old one broke down yesterday. Mrs. Higgins couldn't get to her dialysis appointment." "Buy 2 vans," I said. "Get the ones with the wheelchair lifts and hire a driver. Mrs. Higgins shouldn't be waiting for a ride." Maya smiled, closing the folder. "You are a soft touch, Reginald King." "I am not soft," I grunted, standing up. "I am efficient. Broken vans are inefficient." "Come on," I said. "Let's take a ride. I want to show you something." We got into my truck. I still drove the same truck. I still lived in the same house. I still wore the same boots. People asked me why. They asked why I didn't buy a yacht or a private island. They didn't understand. The money didn't change who I was. It just amplified what I could do. If you are a fool, money makes you a bigger fool. If you are a builder, money gives you more bricks. I drove through the city, past the docks where I used to work, past the diner where Keisha still washed dishes. I saw her sometimes when I drove by. She looked tired, but she looked steady. She was paying her dues. We talked on Sundays. The conversations were short, but they were real. She was learning the hard way, but she was learning. I turned the truck toward the suburbs. The wealthy suburbs. The kind of neighborhood where the lawns are manicured with scissors and the driveways are paved with stone. We pulled up to a house. It was a big house. A McMansion. It had columns in this front that served no purpose and a fountain that looked like a bird bath for giants. It was ostentatious. It was loud. It was tacky. It was Hunter and Keisha's old house. The bank had foreclosed on it 6 months ago. Hunter had leveraged it to the hilt, taking out second and third mortgages to pay for his gambling and his image. When the house of cards fell, the bank took it back. And then I bought it. I bought it at auction for pennies on the dollar. I paid cash. Maya looked at the house. She shivered slightly. "I hate this place," she whispered. "I remember the arguments. I remember the pretending." "It is just a building, Maya," I said, turning off the engine. "It has no soul. It only has the spirit you put inside it." We got out. I walked to the front door. The lock was new. I opened it and the smell hit me. Not the smell of expensive perfume and lies that used to fill these halls. It smelled of bleach and lavender and oatmeal cookies. I walked into the living room. The spot where Hunter used to keep his 80-inch television was gone. In its place was a row of comfortable armchairs arranged in a circle. The wet bar where he used to display his expensive scotch was now a station for tea and coffee. An old man walked out of the kitchen. He was wearing a cardigan and slippers. He looked to be about 80. "Mr. King," he said, his face lighting up. "You are early. We haven't put the chessboards out yet." "Hello, Mr. Henderson," I said, shaking his hand. "No chess today. I just wanted to show my granddaughter the renovations." Maya looked around, confusion clouding her face. "Grandpa," she said, "what is this?" I swept my arm around the room. "This," I said, "is the Beatrice King Center for Senior Care." I walked her through the house. The dining room where Keisha used to host dinner parties to impress people she hated was now a communal dining hall. The long table was set for 20 people. We walked up the stairs. The master bedroom. Hunter's sanctuary of ego was now a medical bay. There were 2 hospital beds, a supply cabinet, and a nurse's station. "This room," Maya whispered, looking at the ceiling. "This is where Dad used to yell at Mom about the credit card bills. Now it is where Mr. Jacobs gets his physical therapy," I said. We cleared out the ghosts, Maya. We exorcised them with good work. We went to the basement, Hunter's man cave, the place where he had plotted against me, the place where he had planned to spend my money. It was now a recreation room. There was a pool table, a library full of books, and a large screen for movie nights. I looked at the walls. I had painted over the dark, trendy gray with a warm yellow. It looked like sunshine. "You bought their house," Maya said, her voice filled with awe. "You bought the symbol of their greed, and I turned it into a shelter for the people they would have despised," I finished. Hunter hated old people. He hated the poor. He hated anyone who couldn't do something for him. He wanted to put me in a home. He wanted to warehouse me. So I turned his castle into a sanctuary for the very people he wanted to throw away. I walked over to the bookshelf and picked up a photo frame. It was a picture of Beatrice. She was smiling that warm smile that could melt snow. "Your grandmother always wanted a big house," I said, looking at the photo. "She wanted a place where she could take care of everyone. She used to bring stray cats home. She used to bring hungry neighbors home. She had a heart big enough for this whole city, but we never had the roof to match." I put the photo back. "Now she does." Maya walked over and hugged me. She held on tight. "You are incredible," she said. "You didn't just win the lottery. You won the war." "The war isn't about winning, Maya," I said, smoothing her hair. "It is about what you build on the battlefield after the smoke clears." Hunter wanted to build a monument to himself. I built a home for others. That is the difference. We walked back out to the truck. Mr. Henderson waved from the window. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the house one last time. It didn't look angry anymore. It didn't look pretentious. It looked useful. "You know, Maya," I said, starting the engine, "people think $300 million changes you. They think it makes you a different person." "Does it?" she asked. "No," I said. "It just takes off the brakes. If you are a car headed for a cliff, money is the gas pedal." That was Hunter. He was always heading for that cliff. The money just got him there faster. "And you?" she asked. "I am a tractor," I chuckled. "I move slow. I pull heavy loads. The money just gave me a bigger field to plow. I put the truck in gear. And I have a lot of plowing to do, baby girl." We drove away, leaving the house behind. I had a fishing trip planned with Cohen for the afternoon. We were going to sit on a dock, drink cheap beer, and argue about baseball. I was going to wear my old hat with the fishing lures stuck in it. I had $150 million in a trust fund. I owned the debt of my enemies. I owned the house of my oppressors. But as I drove down the road with my granddaughter beside me, I realized the richest thing I owned wasn't in a bank account. It was the peace in my heart. It was the knowledge that I had stayed true to the man in the mirror, Reginald King, logistics manager, father, grandfather, and the man who didn't blink. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and gold. It was my favorite time of day, the twilight hour, the time when the work is done and the world holds its breath before the night sets in. I sat on my front porch in the same rocking chair I had bought 30 years ago. It creaked a little, a familiar, comforting sound like the voice of an old friend. The air was cooling down, smelling of cut grass and the damp earth of the garden I had tended all afternoon. I held a cup of chamomile tea in my hands, letting the warmth seep into my calloused palms. I was not wearing a suit today. I was wearing my work boots and my flannel shirt, the uniform of a man who is comfortable in his own skin. A year and a half. That is how long it had been since the numbers 8/12/1933, 45, and the Powerball 4 changed everything. People still drove by the house sometimes. They would slow down, point, and whisper, "There is the crazy lottery guy. There is the man who gave away $300 million. They looked at me with a mixture of confusion and awe. They couldn't understand it. To them, money was the destination. To me, it was just fuel, and I had used that fuel to burn away the rot in my life and build something solid in its place. I wasn't just the crazy lottery guy anymore. I wasn't just the old man who shuffled to the mailbox. I was Reginald King. And for the first time in a long time, that name meant something in this house. It meant protector. It meant provider. It meant king. I took a sip of tea. It was bitter and hot, just the way I liked it. My mind drifted upstate to a concrete building surrounded by razor wire. Hunter Miller was there, prisoner number 89,402. Cohen gave me updates once a month. Hunter wasn't doing well. The arrogance that had sustained him in the free world was a liability inside. He had tried to be a big shot in the yard, telling inmates about the millions he was owed, about the injustice of his situation. He learned quickly that in prison, nobody cares about what you almost had. They only care about what you have now. And Hunter had nothing. He had lost his appeal last month. The judge, a woman with eyes like flint, had looked at the evidence of the arson and the domestic abuse and had upheld the sentence without hesitation. 10 years. He would be 52 when he got out. He would be a middle-aged man with a felony record, no skills, and a debt that was still accruing interest. I didn't feel happy about it. You don't feel happy when you cut a gangrenous limb off a body. You feel relief. You feel lighter. But you still feel the phantom pain of what used to be there. Hunter was a tragedy of his own making. He had built a cage out of greed and walked into it willingly. A bus pulled up to the stop at the corner. The brakes hissed. A woman stepped off. It was Keisha. She walked up the street carrying a plastic bag. She walked with a purpose. Her head was up. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't ashamed. She was tired, yes. I could see the fatigue in the slope of her shoulders. She was still washing dishes, still taking the bus, still living in the room above the garage. But she was clean. She was sober. And she was paying her own way. She turned up the walkway. She saw me on the porch and waved. It wasn't the frantic wave of a woman looking for a savior. It was the wave of a daughter greeting her father. "Hey, Daddy," she called out. "Hello, Keisha." She walked up the steps. She didn't try to hug me. We weren't there yet. Maybe we never would be. But there was a peace between us, a truce built on hard boundaries and harder truths. "I brought dinner," she said, lifting the bag. "It is leftovers from the diner. Meatloaf and green beans. The owner let me take it. It is fresh, not from the garbage." She said it with a hint of pride. She wasn't stealing. She wasn't begging. She was provided for. "Thank you," I said. "Go put it in the oven to keep warm. Maya will be home soon." She went inside. I heard her moving around the kitchen. I heard the clink of plates. She was setting the table. Keisha was rebuilding. It was a slow process, a painful process. She had lost her husband, her home, her friends, and her reputation. She had started from zero. Actually, she had started from below zero, but she was climbing. She was learning that $1 earned by sweating over a sink is worth $1,000 given by a father. She was learning that dignity isn't something you buy at a store. It is something you forge in the fire of adversity. She wasn't the daughter I had dreamed of raising. She wasn't the pianist or the doctor. She was a dishwasher, but she was honest. And for the first time in her life, she was real. Headlights swept across the lawn. The new van from the shelter pulled into the driveway. It had the logo painted on the side, the Beatrice King Center. Maya hopped out of the driver's seat. She was wearing scrubs. She had spent the afternoon at the center helping the nurses. She looked exhausted and happy. She radiated a light that made the sunset look dim. She ran up the porch steps and kissed me on the cheek. "Hey, Grandpa. You won't believe it. Mr. Henderson walked today, without his walker. He walked all the way to the garden." I smiled. "He is a stubborn old mule," I said. "Just like me." She laughed. It was a beautiful sound, a sound that chased away the shadows. "Is Mom here?" she asked, looking at the door. "She is inside," I said, setting the table. Maya nodded. She looked at me. "You did good, Grandpa," she said. "You fixed it." "I didn't fix it, Maya," I said, patting her hand. "I just cleared the brush so you could plant the seeds." She went inside to join her mother. I heard them talking. Their voices were low and gentle. No screaming, no accusations. Just two women sharing a kitchen trying to find a way back to each other. I stayed on the porch for a moment longer. The streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood was quiet. I thought about the ticket, that small piece of thermal paper that had started a war. I still had the digital copy on my phone. Sometimes I looked at it, not with regret, never with regret. $300 million. It was a number so big it was abstract. It was a weapon. Hunter looked at it and saw a lifestyle. I looked at it and saw a test. If I had kept the money, Hunter would still be here pretending to love me while waiting for me to die. Keisha would still be a hollow shell of a woman spending money she didn't earn. Maya would be a target, a rich girl with a target on her back. The money would have destroyed us. It would have rotted us from the inside out. So I gave it away. I gave it to the veterans who needed prosthetics. I gave it to the shelters that needed roofs. I gave it to the kids who needed books. And in exchange, I got my life back. I looked through the window. I saw Keisha and Maya sitting at the table. They were laughing. It was a small tentative laugh, but it was real. They were eating meatloaf that Keisha had brought, and they were drinking water from my tap. They were safe. They were together. And they were free from the curse of easy money. I stood up. My knees popped. I was 76 now. I was old. I was tired. But I was standing. I picked up my empty teacup. I looked at the dark sky where the first stars were appearing. I smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph. It was a smile of contentment. $300 million cannot buy happiness, I whispered to the night. But it bought the truth. And the truth is priceless. I turned and walked into my house, into my castle. I locked the door behind me, not to keep people out, but to keep the peace in. I walked into the kitchen. Room for one more, I asked. Always, Daddy, Keisha said, pulling out my chair. I sat down at the head of the table. I looked at my family. It wasn't the perfect family. It was scarred. It was broken. It was glued back together with hard work and tough love. But it was mine. And as I picked up my fork, I knew that I was the richest man in the world. Money is a powerful magnifying glass. It doesn't change who you are. It reveals exactly who you have always been. My daughter and her husband thought winning the lottery was their ticket to freedom, but their greed turned it into a cage of their own making. They forgot the most fundamental rule of life: you cannot build a castle on a foundation of betrayal. In the end, the true jackpot wasn't the millions in the bank, but the peace of mind that comes from living with integrity and the legacy of love I secured for the only one who deserved it. Respect is earned, not inherited, and dignity is the only currency that never devalues. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what would you have done in my place.